I do kind of figure that we'll have that there'll be chatter about murder drones today because yeah, it it suddenly popped up again. I was not expecting a video that would actually give us some lore, and good to see that the audio is coming through nice and crispy already. So let's get going. Jake Branch dropped by earlier and dropped a hi. Scooby Booey says, "Here we go." And Tyler Goodman says, "Did you check the new Merge Drones short? It's now on Glitch." Yes. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And it actually dropped a little bit earlier than I was expecting. I knew it was coming out today, but I think it dropped around noon, which is a little bit surprising to me because I think they normally try to do a little bit later in the afternoon. But yeah, it wasn't just a merch episode or a little merch commercial. It was a full on Jay backstory type deal, and it really made Jay a far more sympathetic character in hindsight. So that was really cool. But
That is really cool.
tonight our main topic will not be murder drones, but sadly, everyone, I will try to actually do a video about it later because it was really cool. But tonight, we got Scott here with us, and we're going to be talking about Frieren.
We are going to be talking about Frieren. So, anybody watching this right now, if you haven't seen a video that I posted, well, Lars helped me post. We're having a little snafu with anybody but Lars having access to the channel at the moment, but Lars helped me post.
Camille's got full control because it's her channel.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, if we can reach her, she's been pretty busy.
Yeah.
Anyway, um, so in that video, I kind of explained I'm like been super into designing tabletop role playing games for the past 6 or 7 months, and Obsession has a gross 429 million worldwide. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Anyway, yeah, so I've been super into designing tabletop role playing game to the point where I have the rough draft done for my own game that I've designed, and it. I'm not really talking about this today. Honestly, I'm applying what I've learned through that process into what I think is just a fun conversation, a fun little mini project I wanted to do on live stream, which was just talking about Frieren and looking at what would a Frieren TTRPG actually look like. So we will see. Like the whole idea of this is just kind of work with the chat, talk with Lars, and we'll kind of go through the process on like establishing a concept and deciding what we would like a Frieren TTRPG to look like.
Yeah, say tonight's going to be a far more, not loosey goosey is not the right way of describing it, but it's like a far more open conversation. A lot of it kind of off the cuff. We will have some guidance given to us by Scott, who put together a slideshow for us. So woohoo, more slideshow stuff. But yeah, we'll have a conversation going about taking a well-known IP, transforming it into a game, which is something that we've been seeing a whole lot more recently, especially if you're a fan of Brandon Sanderson. How the Cosmere is getting multiple games, not just a tabletop RPG for the Stormlight Archive. It will actually be expanded to encompass the entire Cosmere, and at the same time, there's a really really intense card game that is a lot like Dominion for Mistborn. It is insanely cool. Also, if you do the Lord Ruler campaign for the Mistborn card game, oh my gosh, it is hard. It is so hard.
That sounds yeah, that sounds awesome. But they're honestly not the only one. I've seen other adaptations. I know for anime specifically, there's a Konosuba TTRPG. I have that one. There's a Goblin Slayer one. There's a Cowboy Bebop one.
Oh, yeah, I
There's
had seen
ones
the
for,
Goblin Slayer one
yeah.
recently.
There's Marvel. Like there's a bunch of stuff for Marvel. There's a bunch of stuff for DC, and that's just the superhero element. There's a bunch for other established IPs. So it's an actual business. I mean, of course, you have to work with the actual IP itself in order to come out with something at the level I'm at right now, which is very novice. But the level I'm at right now, if I wanted to come out with something that was very Frieren based, I would have to say, oh, Frieren's an inspiration, and then come out with something that's been retextured and has its own unique appearance to it in that way. But I do like how a lot of this stuff is coming out, and more of these games are being brought to light because people love the IP already, like Stormlight Archives, and they're like, hey, I want to play a game that's like set in this. Let's take a look at this. And it honestly, I think it's a great way to bring people out of what people in the TTRPG community are frustrated with. It's like there's so many of these great games, but there's so many people locked into focusing on D&D specifically that they're a little frustrated that people won't look elsewhere. And I think the IPs looking into that kind of stuff is a good way to bring people into that.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that there. And kind of actually to that point, so we got Stormcrow saying here, hey, I see Frieren, I see TTRPGs, now do a Deltarune TTRPG. I'm just going to already throw this on out there because Deltarune is, as a game, is already set up it with its turn-based combat and everything, and also and for instance, I will already say this: if you were to do a TTRPG of Deltarune, one of the mechanics that I would actually have in there is that you would have I would have cards for the different
Mm-hmm.
actions that the characters could take because they're like, of
Okay.
course, you can fight to subdue enemies, or you can act to subdue enemies. Acting is pacifist, fighting is your genocide run,
Mm-hmm.
and so what I would do, one of the things I would actually do is the game master for every encounter would have erasable cards, kind of like
Okay.
whiteboard, almost like whiteboard cards, but probably more along the lines of telestration, and
Okay.
write out different actions that the characters can take, and basically have then like a deck of like random actions that they'd have like that they would pull and like have to use in that situation to try
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
to try to deal with it because in the game Deltarune, like for the player on your first run, all of the different actions that you can take feel just so incredibly random because you don't know these creatures you're going up against, you don't know what their stories are, and the actions are there to kind of help you better understand what you're engaging with. But that would then mean for like the for the dungeon master that they would have to have like they would have to have such a massive like monster book always ready to go, and they'd have to like read off the different actions. I think it'd get kind of clunky. This would add in just some fun randomization, and you could get some really funny stuff out of it.
Yeah. Well, and I think in that kind of sense, because I've seen this kind of thing before in a different game, is when you're adapting something that's already a video game into a game. Case in point, the Final Fantasy 14 video game, which is the MMO game, they've made a TTRPG for it, and it's one of the ones that I have.
Really?
The thing is, adapting a video game where you have so many of these different stats, so many of these different abilities, it becomes an exhausting list of different abilities that each character option has access to, especially as they level up. And so it's very hard to read through that one. Like, I like the
Mm.
concept, the art is fantastic in it, but it's very hard to read through and understand everything that's happened to it because they're trying to go one to one video game to a tabletop experience. And it's there's a gap there that you kind of have to learn how to manage. What I'm thinking though, if we're gonna, off of your description, I haven't played Deltarune or Undertale myself, um, but and it's something we will talk about later. Is you can choose to have your game focus more on the narrative happening in the story than the actual battle. And
Mm-hmm.
there's ups and downs to each side of that, honestly. Um, but there can be can be a lot of fun. Um, in either side, honestly, and different people like argue different sides of that. I know Brendan Mulligan. He's outright stated before that he likes D&D because it's kind of a mix between the two, like narrative and mechanics focus.
Mm-hmm.
Because he likes having all of the straight up mechanics to handle combat, but narrative they're just able to role play and have fun. There's not a lot of rules like defining exactly what you have to do there a lot of the time. So he's like, it ends up making the game more fun for him and for how he likes to run the game because D&D helps him focus on that.
Same. I like that. And to answer Lorraine's question right here, if you played any of the inspirations for Undertale or Deltarune, if Super Smash Brothers doesn't count, then I have not played Earthbound. And Earthbound's the only game that I know of that's supposed to be a real inspiration
I
for
don't
either
know.
game.
Smash Brothers it's a fun game. I love Smash Brothers, but
Oh, I love
it,
Smash Brothers.
it's such a unique it's such a unique play style that like every character pulled into this is just pulled from another game just to play in the Smash Bros style. I don't know if you can actually call it that way. To
Yeah.
answer that question, no, I don't think I have. Um, I'm I play video games, but I'm really casual with video games. Honestly, I've been focusing more on like Magic the Gathering, and recently, like I've kind of been pointing out, with tabletop role playing games. So that's been my main focus for a good while now.
Has anyone tried? I mean, Wizards of the Coast would sue anyone who actually tried to make this public, so there's that. But has anyone actually tried doing a more role playing based version of Magic the Gathering?
Yeah, I was just reading about one the other day. It's very anime based. Um, Dang it, what's the name of it? It basically has a system made up so you can be like you're like a planeswalker, you're a Yu-Gi-Oh character that's summoning these monsters, and you're able to use established card games from other systems. So like Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh, Card Fight, Vanguard, etc., etc., etc.
Mm,
To um, as like a class option. Basically, you choose a different system, and you're able to plug it into the game and role play through with that, which I think is a lot of fun.
wait a
Um,
second. Isn't there a manga about that where you got a boy and a girl using their Magic the Gathering decks to like survive being isekai'd?
there's a few that I can think of. There's one specifically I really like, which the main girl ends up waking up as an elf and decides to destroy everything.
I woke
That one's
I
brutal.
woke up and I chose violence.
Yeah. Honestly, the most popular Magic the Gathering manga is called Destroy All Humans,
That's the one.
and
That's the one.
it's not an isekai.
Oh, it's
It's
not
a
an
it's a
isekai?
rom com.
Oh my
They just happened to
gosh.
play Magic the Gathering. They're high school students in 1995, with like just after Magic got to Japan, and yeah, it's a rom com. It's
That is
fun. I've
amazing.
I've read a bunch of that one. It's actually really fun. But there is a manga about this girl waking up as an elf and completely wrecking the entire universe.
Yeah, I like how you bring that up coincided perfectly with Frieren having one of her little smug smiles that should like terrify anyone.
Yep. Oh man. All right. Well,
All right, yeah, shall we get into
yeah, let's get into it a
your
little bit.
slideshow?
Yeah.
All right,
So I
let
made a
me.
little slideshow. If nobody's seen the video I came out with earlier this week, I just talked about like what you need to start doing when you're looking at designing your own TTRPG from scratch. And this is specifically like you're starting from scratch. If you wanted to adapt a rule set, adapt an IP to playing in like D&D or in some other system, that's perfectly fine. Like in fact, a lot of people do that, and it's a reason why 5e is partially so popular is because a lot of people are able to come up with their own rules and books and supplements and be able to put that out and share that with the world really easily. And that's why it was such a deal when Wizards of the Coast decided to try and mess with that with their 2024 edition.
Mm-hmm. And then when they also try to clamp down on homebrews,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
was that
that's
was
part of it. Yeah,
yeah, that was, oh my gosh, that talk about the height of arrogance. It's like, how are you going to know that I'm homebrewing anything?
yeah,
Like I would have to try to like publish what I'm doing and make money off of it for you to ever know what I have done to your rules. So
yeah,
like, what's up with this?
yeah. I mean, it's like authors trying to cut down on fan fictions, and yeah, that one you're never going
Yeah.
to be able to stop that from happening.
Like the McGaffrey estate.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, what? Now I'm just gonna put that out there. That's honestly one of the reasons why I have not finished the Dragon Riders of Pern
Mm.
because I'm like, it's so vindictive going after your own fans. I'm
Yeah.
like I'm like, no, no, I get it. I get you want to be in control of everything, but no, that's just dumb.
Right. Well, and especially when like having an active fan community with like fan fiction and stuff like that helps keep things alive far longer than they probably originally should have. I'm looking at Harry Potter specifically.
Yeah.
If it didn't have the fan community and the fan fiction community it has,
Mm-hmm.
the that fandom would I would still think it'd be fairly popular. But yay, ISO, you're still alive. It's good to hear from you.
Woo!
Um, it would definitely not have the place in the like nerd community that it currently does, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, and sorry, I know that we need to be talking. I know that we need to be talking about a Frieren
You're fine.
TTRPG here, but I'm just going to interject this. I am very curious to see how the Harry Potter show turns out starting
Oh
later this
yeah.
year. I personally, if I can swing it, I intend to do a similar reaction for every episode of the Philosopher's Stone season, like what I did for Rings of Power, where it's like I'm going to break it down. I'm going to talk about the what the show has done on its own merits, and then compare it to the book. And
Mm,
I think that that would actually be a real, and that'd also be like a good nexus for a conversation about J.K. Rowling's writing, because it's pretty popular now to take pot shots at her, but I feel like a lot of that is more politically and socially motivated than
yeah.
rather on the merits of the story itself. And that is a conversation that needs to be had. And it's a conversation I feel needs to be had removing the author as much as possible from the work, because J.K. Rowling is, let's face it, very polarizing. But what
Yeah.
about the work itself?
Right.
And I think the show will be like a really good way of like having that conversation, because
Yeah.
it's high time that we had it. Uh, and I said I just finished the Murder Drones special. That was a whole damn episode to Murder Drones. Yes, yes, it was, and I loved it so much. I was saying earlier, I'm thinking I might do a video about it as soon as I can, because it was just so good.
Nice.
Anyways, shall we go on to the first? Well, not to the
Yeah.
first, but to the second slide. So
Yeah,
we're
go
technically
for it.
on the first slide. All right. So first and foremost, themes and genre. So let's establish what themes are most important for Frieren beyond Journey's End.
Okay,
Uh,
so
yeah.
I put this here because when you're designing your game, you have to know what audience you're basing this game towards. I mean, yeah, TTRPG as a community, it is very niche in its own way. It's a very accomplished and very like money making niche, but it's definitely its own thing because like you've got people who play games, you got people who play video games. TTRPGs have gotten more and more like popular as it's grown. Who Tyler Goodman was saying, Obsession now is a gross 429 million worldwide. I believe it. Like it's definitely grown huge. But what's gonna draw people in anymore is because there's so many games out there. I have a whole bookshelf pretty much full of different TTRPG books, and what's gonna draw people in more isn't necessarily the mechanics; it's the themes and the genre and the artwork that they're seeing that's going to draw them into the game. So first, thinking about what are the themes, what are the genre, what's stands out lore wise, story wise, first look wise, is going to make the biggest impression on if somebody's going to pick a book up, especially a book that's like $50-$60, which a lot of these books are.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to draw their attention in? And so, what about Frieren stands out most? I think that's my question. What themes and genre do we need to nail if we're actually making a Frieren TTRPG?
One of the things. So here's something that I think makes Frieren special. Uh, so I'm going to almost kind of be splitting hairs here, but it's an important distinction.
Hmm.
Frieren is going somewhere. She's got what her quest is around a desire to go somewhere and experience something. While there are big enemies to fight along the way, the demon lord, as far as we know in the story, is not waiting for her at Enda.
Well, they killed the demon lord.
Yeah,
already.
the demon lord the demon lord is dead. So the big fight is already more or less done. And one of the things that makes that then in terms of what I would say like a gameplay is concerned is that you are gearing up to take your players and their characters more so through an experience. They need to the character must go metaphysically from point A to point Z in a character arc. And that character arc is not defined by some big villain at the end, which is something that we mostly would associate with Dungeons and Dragons. Almost every major Dungeons and Dragons story that you've heard of or that you've played has had a big bad evil guy, the BBEG. And it's all about defeating the BBEG. And along the way, you've got character development. Frieren basically says, what if you remove the BBEG and it was all about the character development? What kinds of what kinds of stories and side quests and an overall journey could you have? And that's one of the things that makes the story of Frieren, in my opinion, so dang good, is that then we're everything about the world and the people that we are exploring is because they are naturally encountered during just a normal road trip, one could say, as opposed to we must go and fight the demon lord. And you actually within the story you even get a comparison where Himmel and the party are all about we gotta go fight, we're going to dungeon crawl, we're going to do good things along the way in order to keep people's spirits up, and then we're going to go fight the demon lord. It's kind of like a checklist of all the awesome things you got to do because you're the hero's party.
Yeah.
But Frieren and company don't necessarily have to do that. They just end up doing it because they're good people. But otherwise, it's not a checklist at all. And so if it makes every encounter feel way more exotic, dramatic, and by chance.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like if you as the if in creating a TTRPG of Frieren, you would want to really make it more experience based rather than monster or encounter based.
So, well, the experience in the fact that like it's more about the emotional experiences. It's about the character growth than like gaining experience by killing monsters over and over again. But I get what you mean. I get the distinction there.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, it's kind of like splitting hairs a little bit right there because in D&D you can also have like in a because I've played lots of D&D, you can also have just social encounters going, but interestingly enough, I'm with one group right now, which is a play by post campaign, and the dungeon master who runs it is adamant that like with it that within the story you're supposed to have an encounter you're supposed to have a combat encounter every 48 to 72 hours in game.
Oh
And
no.
he says that's based off of like uh, some sort of suggestion from the rule book. I have never heard that before, but I'm like, that's a lot of combat, and that is a game that is just is overly packed with fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And the same dungeon master has offered to me to potentially, I don't know if this will actually ever happen, but it's like potentially like DM a subplot with it within his campaign, which is a big risk to take if you're the dungeon master. Just gonna say,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought if that ever happens, I will make that I'll make that subplot social encounters rather than combats. Like there will be combat because I've got some really cool things planned for what he pitched to me, but it's like no, we need characters actually engaging with others in a way that's not going to lead to like knives in the back or
Right.
swords in the front.
Yeah. Which makes a lot of sense. I think a good way to, and we'll talk about this more later, but a good way to focus on that kind of thing is have a focus on everything happening in the story, have like cinematic depth and weight to it more than just like a crunchy battle system that's happening. Like have stuff happen quick. Don't let it like figure out a way to make it happen quick and easy and have it move forward and focus on like more on possible critical hits, focus more on like really flashy interesting moments than the just trying to slug your way through a
Mm-hmm.
situation in that sense. But like we're also talking about like the social encounters. We're talking about the interactions between characters, which honestly in the games I've played with you in the group we're in and the other group I've had, most fun I had was honestly the social encounters just between the characters, not necessarily between NPCs, just between characters. You have the most like social growth and character
That
fun.
that lost library that you put us into. Oh my gosh, that was amazing and horrifying all at once. I was on pins and needles that we were going to get eaten by a horde of mimics.
You almost did. You almost did. It was pretty good. Lydia should not have attacked that one book.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, yeah. For context to those listening who haven't played, we Scott put us through a survival adventure campaign that included a murder mystery, and our party got marooned on this floating island that has this magical library that used to be part of the Fey realm, and it's just this exotic library with all this knowledge. contained therein with some really funny rules, and you want to obey the rules because really bad things happen if you don't. Also, mimics got in there at some point, and so the entire library is full of mimics. which I need to bring up the Frieren footage
Oh
again
no.
for that. I don't know exactly where it is where she's getting eaten by a mimic, but uh, yeah, that was kind of what we were the dangers we were flirting with.
It was a good time. It was a good time. All right. Any other like themes and genres we really want to focus on as we're going into designing this?
As we go into designing to design Frieren, um I man this is so it's so important to the feel of the story, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a hard one. I feel it's a hard one to replicate in in a TTRPG setting without getting too
Okay.
dour, and that is the melancholy, the slowness, and the self-reflective nature that that the story of Frieren has. If you want to capture that essence of melancholy, uh, I feel like you would need to have some really good pointers for the players and for the game master on how to keep the story fun, but to maintain that self reflection, that slowness, and everything,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe let people know like if you're here for like fireballs dancing and everything, go play another game. Like you'll have that in certain
Yeah.
encounters, but that's not at the heart of Frieren. Something one of the things that you said to me a little while ago in another conversation
Mm-hmm.
was how Dungeons and Dragons has three pillars or two
Yeah.
pillars
Which
of
is our next topic, but yeah.
yeah, like things that's really meant to focus on, and ultimately everyone always comes down to combat, even though there's other things that D&D is supposed to excel at, and especially for certain classes they've got all these abilities for those other pillars, but they are almost always neglected in favor of combat.
Mm-hmm.
And Frieren, if you wish to properly adapt it into a role-playing game, the combat is not the main focus.
Right.
And almost in a way, like this would be breaking down like later on to mechanics and leading the game, you would actually have to kind of have serious repercussions for people who try to be overly magical, overly combative, because even within the story of Frieren, there are nasty consequences for people who think that they can just solve everything through violence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that will be an important part of it. I think combat will be a part of that, but I think yeah, you're right. Trying to put the nostalgia and the melancholy into it, I think is going to be a little bit more complicated part to this, but I think if we are going to focus more a narrative game,
Mm-hmm.
then I I don't think it's impossible. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
it's just going to take some thought. It's going to take some really thinking through everything you want to include game structure wise to make sure that's included in some form or another.
Say real quick, we got Rubens here saying one of my favorite settings is the story of Amphorius, a world with ancient Greek aesthetic, which is nothing but a simulation to fuel the destruction of the rest of the cosmos. The one guy being and extrapolating the said simulation over and over, waiting for someone or something outside of this world to somehow add a variable. It almost kind of reminds me of No Ein reading that.
Hmm.
Everyone's also Frieren is probably one of the best animes in balancing violence and character building, just like Jujutsu Kaisen. Choosing an explicitly violent path will get you screwed.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of truth to that. So it'll be interesting to try and figure out what we want to do there. I mean, yeah, definitely we want to lean into the fantasy aesthetic of it, but like we're exploring a world, we're going on a journey. We're learning all sorts of new stuff about the world we're in, and as we're pushing forward, we're going to learn more about ourselves as we move forward.
Hmm.
So I think I agree that there's more importance to that than there is going to be to like any of the combat or any of that kind of stuff. But there, I think we'd be remiss not to have a combat setup in this. But like I said before, we want to focus on it being very quick and cinematic and interesting over a slog, like a mechanical slog,
Hmm.
um, which D&D kind of messes up on sometimes. It's honestly one of D&D's biggest weaknesses is how much everything slows down when you actually get into combat.
Well, one of the kind of though as a slight counter, one of the
Hmm.
things that makes not quite the finale to season one because the exam arc
Hmm.
isn't like the big fight against against the replicas.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It isn't the end of the season, but it's close to it. That is such a fun and unique scenario within Frieren, because one of the reasons why the fights are so cinematic and bombastic is because the mages have limited mana
Yeah.
to contend with, and some spells take a lot of mana, but like they're almost surefire killers. And in the King's Tomb, where they're forced to not only face off against traps but then replicas of themselves,
Hmm.
they start having to think very strategically, because these replicas uh, seemingly don't just have their own looks and skill sets, but a comparable amount of mana.
Yeah.
So it's all then about strategy, and that means then that these mages have to start thinking many moves ahead. They have to conserve. Otherwise, they could very easily wipe themselves out and not be ready for when a replica then comes from behind or whatever.
Hmm.
So I think that, like, again, like in terms of combat, it would all come down to knowing to knowing your mechanics that would allow for those awesome cinematic fights, but
Hmm.
also then allow the very creative game master and
Oh yeah.
players to enjoy a far more strategic slog. It's one of the reasons why we said that, like, that the
Hmm.
dungeon crawl in Frieren is amazing, because it does everything that a good dungeon crawl is supposed to do.
Right. Well, and I think the thing here is it's not just about the combat, it's about the investigative, it's about the planning and like you said the strategic nature of them talking it out and figuring out the situation and very much like kind of scientific method style trying to figure out a way through the dungeon they're in and like
Mm-hmm.
their dungeon arc that they have there in the final exam is super fun because it's a bunch of these very well educated mages trying to solve a problem over everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And so focusing on like magic isn't necessarily for combat, it's for problem solving and combat could be a solution, but it doesn't have to be a solution and more often than not it's not the only solution necessarily. And I think that applies to all the characters. I think that applies to characters like Stark as well. I mean, he's super strong, but like, I mean, I've definitely heard of and I've been that character, barbarian that's like, oh, I'm tired of everybody arguing about how to get through this door. I'm just gonna bust it down.
Yep.
That's a way to solve the problem.
Sometimes brute force is the right response.
Right.
It reminds me of Pirates of the Caribbean. Sometimes the right course demands an act of piracy.
Right. Well, in Stark's character too, he's got incredible stamina, so he's able to ha- handle some of these situations better than Frieren or Fern, just because he's able to just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think
Like,
that's fantastic. I want to know why we didn't get more of oh, the Stillbird Wings guy in the first season, because I would have loved to see more of that, of his stuff.
what of verbal?
Is it verbal?
Wait, the still wings? You mean the guy who set up the exam challenge with the
Yeah,
Skrilla?
yeah,
Oh yeah. What's his name? Genau.
yeah. Genau, I forgot his name. Because he was awesome in the second season.
Oh yeah.
He was so cool.
I think that Genau is one of those characters that the author just discovered along the way, and it's like, you know what? No, this guy is getting his own arc.
Okay, Lars, I need your opinion on this most recent comment. Who would win, Frieren at her prime fused with Satoru Gojo, or a coughing baby?
I mean, it depends. It depends. Does this baby have colic? Because if this baby has colic, not even Goku is winning.
Okay, I get it.
Yep. Uh,
I do like what Ribbons is saying though. Is in my mind, at least, I think combat should be in the character mind the final means to rely on, where there is nothing else that can be done. Obviously, some characters will jump to it easier, but I think it makes it so fights become more impactful because it means characters really are at their limit. And yeah, I really like how that's set up, and it kind of ties back to combat's a solution to the problem solving that you're going through.
mm,
So, yeah. All right, let's move on to the next one because I think this is gonna. We've talked a lot about like the themes and the genre. Now we're gonna actually get into defining what's gonna be the most important parts of this game. So pillars are gonna be defined not as the theme necessarily, but it's gonna be the focal points that the gameplay is based around. And in this case, so for example, you have D&D where combat is one of their main pillars. A lot of the game structure and mechanics are all designed around combat. But there's other pillars that we can focus on. We could focus on exploration. We can focus on investigation. We could focus um, on creating more suspenseful elements in the game in some ways. And so defining what are the pillars we want to build this around, I think is going to help us as we move forward in this project.
so one of the things that immediately comes to my mind that a TTRPG could do really well for Frieren
Mm,
is bring to life the magic science.
okay.
Because so you've got all these tomes of magic that Frieren's been collecting, all of these spells. And I mean, like, when you have someone who wrote an entire spell book on how to flip your pancakes
Mm-hmm.
with magic, which is real. I love that that's real in the story. Like, you have to stop and think. Wait a second. Someone wrote an entire book on the magical science of flipping the perfect pancake. Like, who, like, who spent their time doing that, and why does it take an entire book to convey that information? And so, and so, like, I think that as opposed to D&D,
Mm,
because like for instance, dungeon masters who guide wizards and sorcerers through learning spells, they're like, you now have spent enough time writing in your book, and you have the special components. You now understand the forces of wind, fire, and earth, and you can now pull upon the magical powers around you or within you and manipulate the elements. And like, sure, it's all cool, and when it's described well enough, it sounds really awesome and it makes sense. But Frieren approaches magic from an interesting perspective of where, again, it's a science, but it's
Mm-hmm.
also at the same time it's a gut feeling. Like, how do you feel as you cast magic is a huge part of it. How you're able to react in the moment when in combat is also a huge part of how you wield magic. And so I think that one of the pillars of play should be just like the nature of magic. Its science aspect, its spiritual aspect, its personal aspect all kind of roll together in one, so that way as your characters are gaining spells, for instance, if you're playing a mage,
Mm-hmm.
that or I'd even argue a priest, since priests they use a different type of magic, but it's kind of explained to be very similar in its own way. That if you're a spellcaster, whether a priest or a mage, it's a matter of understanding the science behind it and then the feel of it in order to properly utilize any spell that you come into contact with, that you have the chance
Right.
of learning.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely more explanations about how the priest's magic is different than actual mage spell casting, but I think what you said isn't wrong either, where it's very similar in its own right. Um, so yeah, there's a good point there. Definitely focusing on like kind of the magic and the well, focusing on like how neat and interesting and how nuanced the magic system is. So making a very interesting magic system, I think, will be very fun part of this. Though I think that's very going to be very specific to if you're wanting to go the mage route
Mm-hmm.
in the story. Which, like, if magic is going to be a major part of play, then I think the case here is okay. Everybody's going to want to be a mage. Who's going to want to be any of the other classes in that sense?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think there's a good point there. There is a really good point there. I think one that I'd really want to push forward having as a pillar of this is because it's so focused on journeying from place to place, it's we want to focus a lot on having a mix of exploration and investigation be a major
Mm-hmm.
part of the game because yeah, you don't necessarily know your entire route through to somewhere. So you're having to like figure it out, and if something's happened that blocks the path, you have to figure out a way around that. And so it goes into that problem solving aspect. But we're the problems here aren't they're not combat. They're using the tools you have given to travel where you need to go.
Mm-hmm. Well, like thinking just from the latest season of Frieren,
Mm-hmm.
you have for instance, you've got the negotiations between Frieren and the one company. I can't remember the name of the company off the top of my head.
The
That
Norman Knight Company, I think
Yeah,
it
the
was.
Norman Knight Company. That's right, the Norman Knight Company. Like it there. So you have business being conducted. You encourage an understanding of economics and of logistics
Mm-hmm.
in order to negotiate a settlement between all the different parties. There's at
Mm-hmm.
least two different instances where Frieren and company need to have social graces around noblemen, not just
Mm-hmm.
simply because they got to interact with them, but because the noblemen are like, you're now going to be part of like whatever schemes we're cooking up.
Right.
And so you got that, but then there's also, of course, the adventure to find to find the one drink. The
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what was it called? It wasn't schlecht. It was what was the I would call it schlecht because it's
Okay, I
just
can't.
disgusting alcohol.
I can't remember exactly what the name of it was, but I
what
know what
was
you're
it?
talking
Because
about.
yeah, it was such a funny name. It was so on the nose. Uh, but but yeah, to have but like you like as far as exploration, like okay, you've got to know a little bit of like you got to know your dungeon diving, not necessarily going
Mm-hmm.
up against all these monsters, but know how to disable traps, take down barriers,
Mm-hmm.
how to follow ancient ruins,
Mm-hmm.
or
Which,
or you got to go into a library and you got to find the right book.
yeah, which I love how much that matches up with like older TTRPG like mechanics, because there's what's known as like the old school revival. And it's basically like reimagining older like 1970s 1980s TTRPGs and giving them a more modern reprint. And in a lot of those, combat's the last thing you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
You really don't want to get into combat because it means you've screwed up and you're probably going to die. So you do everything you can to stay out of combat in those situations and get out of the situation. And like old school, like original D&D was one of those.
Uh-huh.
So, and I love how like in Frieren, especially as they go into the northern plateau, yeah, let's try and stay out of combat as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, especially for the mages, because the more mana you expend, the more monsters you attract to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Which is again one of those consequences of hey, like if you're just constantly using magic, using violence to solve all your problems, well then yeah, you're in trouble.
Yeah, yeah. So,
So
all right. Any other pillars we really want to focus on?
um well, social,
Yeah.
I think, and it's not just, and I think social in this case isn't just simply like hey, how do you talk to npcs
Mm.
along your way, but that coming back to trying to tap into that self-reflective nature of Frieren, that you need. I actually think that one of the ways that like in terms of like getting around to thinking about mechanics and whatnot, I think it'd be really good for there to be a setup that after like so long down your road or after so many encounters, that the game master encourages kind of self reflection from the characters,
Mm-hmm.
and that could be really interesting, even if it's just kind of like a one on one, like the other players might be able to like hear but can't interact as the dungeon master and one player in particular kind of have a back and forth. Like, what have you learned? What do you feel you have gained? Do you feel you've lost anything? Was
Mm-hmm.
this worth it?
Which,
And and not only would that be really great for the character in the moment, but I feel like that's really good for the dynamic between player and game master, because I think the game master needs to know that what they've been doing is actually worthwhile for the players.
mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's like, why are you still doing this?
Right. I love the concept in the show of them going after Himmel's journal and like seeing the day to day things that Himmel noticed and Himmel um, was really fascinating and interested by in their journey as they traveled to defeat the Demon King. And honestly, include a journal in the game. There's a lot of games where journaling is a major part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see why not. It's like, okay, write journal entries from the viewpoint of your character. I don't see why not. It's another way to role play your character as you move forward. And it's one of the big things with tabletop role playing games. That role playing aspect of it is probably the most important word in that title.
That reminds me of what Zaza's done in our games,
Hmm.
where they've kept fantastic notes
Oh, yeah.
of every single session, but but have also done it from the perspective of their character.
Right.
And so we had Semantic, and then Desi, and it's just been it's so good.
Well, you've done that too. That one character you had for Nate's game, the old guy, and
Uh-huh.
him writing his epic fan fiction of what's going on. Like that was
Yeah.
so funny. So funny.
Yeah, my weak old fart who tried to make himself like the main character of the story, and he's anything but.
That party was a wreck. I was playing the this blind fortune teller. You were playing an old guy writing fan fiction, and then Danny had
The seamstress.
yeah, well, the knitter
Yeah, the knitter.
that had anxiety issues.
Yeah.
That entire party was a mess. It was fun though.
Oh, it was amazing.
All right. Well, let's move on to our next bit.
Okay, let me bring it on up. Move on
Yeah.
to the next slide. Also, real quick, Ruben says the agenda demands more lobotomy kaizen edits over quality posts. Supreme Agenda knows best. Oh, I guess the Supreme Agenda does know best. I am not the Supreme Agenda. All right, so narrative first versus mechanics first.
Right.
Do we want
And
our game to focus on narrative play or mechanics run simulations? Just because we focus on one or the other doesn't mean the other side isn't there.
Yeah, so we've talked about this. It's definitely come up in our conversation so far, and I think we're definitely leaning more towards having a very narrative first focus in the game. Doesn't mean we're not going to have mechanics defining things, because we still have to have it be a game. We have to have some kind of randomization. We have some way to create a game loop, an interactive game loop, so it's not just like a bunch of kids on the playground saying, "Oh, I do this. I do this because I'm stronger," or whatever. When you have a game, like, there's actual rules that define what you're able to do, and it really just is there to set a boundary on what's possible in the game more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the focus. Even with a narrative focused game, having that boundary set, what's our power level set at, what are we capable of actually doing, makes it so you're actually in the seat of the character more, as you're moving forward, because you're like, okay, what are my limitations? What is this character actually able to do? And keeping that in mind helps define who your character is, and I think it will lend more to the narrative aspect, especially as we're focusing on like pushing those character arcs forward.
So I actually kind of want to do a quick tangent here, because I feel like there's some real writing advice to kind of take out of this.
Yeah.
In terms of thinking narrative first versus mechanics first. You need to blend both together in order to make it an interesting game. Without the mechanics, the narrative can easily get derailed.
Correct, yeah.
The mechanics are there to help guide the narrative, even if it is narrative focused. Mechanics first, the narrative is there to give the mechanics purpose.
Yeah.
And in terms of like writing and everything, like, this is plot versus world building. Without the world building, your plot loses itself. The world building is there to help anchor the plot. But without the plot, your world building has nowhere to go. It's just interesting factoids. And I've recently been reading a couple of books by an independent author. The first book is Debunked, and I can't remember the name of the second book in the series. But that is actually a series that I would argue is more world building first, narrative second. Because there is just so much that there's like so much of this insane other like Earth that the author wants to communicate, and basically the plot is there to justify you going to all of these insane places, meeting all these hilarious people, and just learning the most random things ever. The plot is good enough that it keeps you interested, because again, lore, world building in of itself is not a story. But like this, it's definitely an example of where the world building is kind of chief. And if anything, I would say like the one thing that bums me out in the story is that most of the characters don't really feel like they've got any particular arc. There's really only two where I'm like, yes, yes, I like these characters because they actually have got character arcs. Everyone there is just a vehicle for the world building to be introduced. Doesn't make it a bad story. In fact, I actually really like the books, but again, like I am more of a character focused person, more narrative focused, and so like it this like the this particular discussion is one that writers themselves will have. This is not just a game design issue, and you as the creator of your own stories have to think what do I prize most in telling my story. And if world building is your answer, just remember world building has no purpose unless the story is there to give it purpose.
Hello?
So yeah, still here.
Oh,
I just wrapped up my thought.
Okay. All right. Yeah. There's there's a lot to think about with that one, and it's definitely a conversation that happens a lot in this community. You can definitely find a lot of videos that talk about specifically like narrative games versus mechanics, crunchy games.
Crunchy.
There's different expectations in all of those, but you really can't get away from having like not having the mechanics and not having the narrative in that sense, because like any of these books, you're gonna have to have lore, you're gonna have to have some kind of setting you're putting everything into. The only ones I haven't, like the only TTRPG books that I haven't seen anything quite like that, are ones that are like core rule books for like a widespread system. So I'm thinking like the Cipher system or the Fate system, where it's literally just boiling all of the mechanical rules down into one book, but doesn't necessarily have any of the lore or rule books. And if you wanted that, there's other books that are going to have more of that are based off of that system. So, especially for this one, like there's going to be a lot of that stuff laid out as lore as we look at maps, as we look at like the setting at large.
Mm-hmm. And
No, go ahead.
So thinking like bring it back around to Frieren. As we said we were leaning more towards a narrative pillar. I think that what this would then translate to in terms of designing the game, but also in terms of playing it, uh, a real emphasis on getting to know the characters and especially your character,
Mm-hmm.
and in terms of like laying that out. I'd say that like I would love to have a character sheet or like a series of sheets
Yeah.
where, as opposed to D&D where a lot of it is okay, what's your items and what's your stats,
Yeah.
it'd be far more the elements laying it out concretely, which in D&D it's all optional of what you give your character for a backstory, whereas here backstory is key.
Yeah, so it'd be kind of flipping the D&D character sheet, where like in this case your backstory comes first, your statistics come second.
Mm-hmm.
And that's definitely something you need to look at, is like, okay, you're creating a character sheet, the most important part to the game should be the focal point of that character sheet.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, it would be the backstory. What's important to your character? what strengthen them. So I'm looking at the video got playing, and we've got Ubel showing up quite a bit. Having her backstory on like how she's able, like her head's messed up enough that her cutting magic works on everything, just because she believes it will cut through it. That's part of her backstory. That's a major part of her backstory, and is part of what makes her that character. And so having that defining statement of like, okay, who's my character? What makes them special based off of what their backstory is? That's fantastic. I fully believe that Fern, her backstory is so focused around like Frieren teaching her how to use the Zoltrax spell that she is the best with that spell and concealing her presence. She's a sniper. She's definitely a sniper, but she's grown into that role because she fully believes she's able to do everything with it.
And also actually a huge part of who Fan is also her relationship with Haita. Because Haita took her in and showed her kindness at a time where it's kind of implied no one else was.
Yeah.
She's an orphan. An orphan kind of like, well, what's the point of going on? And he's all like, oh, well, I'll take care of you. And he did, but at the same time, at this point, he's an old man dealing with the consequences of a life of alcoholism. And so he himself also needs a lot of help. And so you get that actually a whole lot in Fan's interactions or personality, that she is someone who is she's constantly busy. She's constantly doing something. She's constantly serving others, but she also wants to be treated really well because that's what she knows thanks to Haita. That it's like if you were to put it into love languages, Fan's love language is service.
Yeah.
Like even though she loves words of affirmation, she wants words of affirmation from Stock, which is sad because Stock is Stock. but really her love language is service. And so it's like thinking about, okay, then so what making this so much more character focused in order to pull out the narrative would absolutely be not just simply the backstory, but talking about like your boons and your banes, like what are you really good at, what are you really bad at, why, and have them the why that is. Why are you good at this? Why are you bad at this? And then of course have guiding motivations and guiding principles, because motivations and principles don't always align. And coming back to Stock, I think is a good example of that, where he's a runaway runt of a failure from his family. He you kind of have to ask, like, okay, Stock, what is your motivation? And kind of his motivation is that he wants to be the kind of guy that Eisen, his master, would want him to be a man that Eisen would be proud of. Okay, well that's really good. Stock then is also a coward. and so it doesn't match up. You're like, wait a second, you want to be a hero as amazing as Eisen, someone that Eisen would recognize as a great hero, but you're also a coward. Okay. and that can be a very interesting dynamic for a character. It prompts opportunities for character growth, which we get from Stock each time that he's able to swallow his fear and engage in a great danger. And with the footage that's right now playing, where they go up against the snake guy, is a huge leap forward for Stock in terms of his personality, in terms of his own character arc, because we see him finally, like, truly for a stranger, waiting around at the position that he knows is going to be the most dangerous. And earlier Stock would come around and do the right thing eventually, but it would be with a lot of whining and poking and prodding.
Right.
But he stays with Genau because he now knows it's the right thing to do, and he's able to swallow his fears.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, led to one of the most epic battles in the entire show.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man.
Yep. And from a gameplay perspective, because you want to be able to kind of pull those moments out for your characters.
Right.
And like what you said earlier, like why would anyone want to be something other than a mage? Like it's things like this. This is where suddenly you're like, wait a second. Oh, there's so much more like I can do with maybe a different class of character, because you're focusing first and foremost not on the powers, but on the person.
Yeah.
And that makes it, I think, a much more rewarding experience to build that character.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. I definitely agree with that. I love, personally, like whenever I've made a D&D character, I love making a character that has some really cool strengths to him, but like also has some very obvious and interesting weaknesses to him, and having them deal with the balance between those strengths and weaknesses makes so much more of an interesting character than like just focusing on min-maxing a character that's just really epic all around.
The power of the min-max. The min-max compels you.
I mean, I do like a good min-max, but like my builds recently have been min-maxing for things other than like battlefield superiority. Like Lennick, the rabbit, his min-max was focused entirely on being really tough and jumping really far. That was my entire focus with the min-maxing on that one.
That jumping saved the entire party's bacon. When you guys got to the main courtyard of the inverted manor, because it was all just a bunch of death trap games meant to bleed you guys, and there goes Lennick just hoppity hopping. so you quote unquote played more games than anyone else, but you also played way less games than you would have otherwise.
Right, which was fantastic. Oh man, and like I was so waiting to just explode everything in that scene where I'm like, okay, the second I see something move in that building, I'm chucking the bomb.
Oh my gosh, that was such a great moment. For those who don't know, because we actually unfortunately didn't record these sessions, I led a campaign that was inspired by The Mummy, Brendan Fraser's Mummy movies, where the party went out into the desert, and it was kind of eldritch horror to a certain extent, where like slowly over time people would start going a little bit more insane at the more time that they spent in this cursed desert, as they go underground into this manor that every day shifts. So the rooms are always changing, and you never know what exactly you're going to encounter the next time you go down there. And so the party actually exceeded so many of my expectations, in part because of their social encounters. Lennick again saved everyone's bacon actually early on by helping to befriend all of the cowboys and adventurers who were meant to be your party's rivals. And so you went into the inverted manor with so many more allies than I had originally intended for you, and that was really, really good. And Zaza and Danielle worked a lot with LaRoche, one of my main NPCs, to get him on your guys' side. And then when you actually went into the inverted manor with this amazing push of almost every character and NPC working together to try to conquer it, that's what led you guys really fast in one dive all the way to the center of the inverted manor, where there was a series of games meant to bleed everyone, and just have this little bunny just whee! Jumping across all these traps with a massive bomb they had put together after murdering the one NPC who refused to be friendly and scavenging all of this person's stolen TNT to make a bomb. Oh, that was amazing.
That in a cooperative role-playing game, yep.
Yeah. Hey, we got Keel Lawrence. Resident Lars stands. Sorry. Here, I think the beauty of Frieren is the soft tragedy. That is to say, the failure of characters to properly communicate with each other. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Him. Okay. Actually, kind of bringing it back around to Deltarune for a brief moment. It's not necessarily that Himmel didn't try to get his intentions and feelings across to Frieren. Frieren just wasn't paying attention, and Himmel wasn't very good at being more blunt. And
Yeah.
that's just like Deltarune. Chris is actually trying to tell Susie already from chapter 2 that they like her, and Susie is too dense to realize that that's what Chris is trying to say. And Chris, for their own reasons, even with our prompting as the player, isn't more direct and always tries to communicate their feelings in a very roundabout Himmel-like way. Chris and Himmel are the same way. What?
I think the question there is like, how would you handle that in a cooperative role-playing game? You're gonna. I think it goes back to defining what your character's background is. It's like, okay, what are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? And if we're having a social aspect to this, I think part of that's going to be is like, okay, what's your social strength? Where do you like what social situations can you handle? But you're also going to have a social bane as well. What can't you handle? So like Stark specifically, he's in some ways not very good at expressing himself, and he doesn't think of the right answer, especially when he's working with Fern. And he tries. Like nothing against him trying, but he goes on a date with her and ends up failing a lot of it because he's just doesn't know. Which is very relatable. But
Yeah.
anyway,
but then he's really good with kids.
Yeah. So like you're gonna have those like strengths and weaknesses that you're gonna want to figure out as like, okay, how do I role play the strengths and the weaknesses at the same time? And especially in a cooperative role playing game where the interactions between characters is going to progress the story a lot, that's going to make a big difference in like defining how you go about role playing the game. And I think it's going to be in that social pillar, having mechanics and a setup to process that as the player going into it. And it's not necessarily having a specific mechanic of, oh, you have to do it this way. It's more along the lines of like, okay, if you have this bane, this is kind of the way your character thinks. So think about how you would react to different social like situations with this limitation. But you would also have strengths on the other side of that as well.
Or I just before I get to Lorraine's question, I said another thought. Lond has horrible communication skills, and yet he's got Riz for days because Ubel can't leave him alone. Let's see. Lorraine said, "Have you ever seen or played a sci-fi themed tabletop game besides Warhammer 40K that has a similar dynamic to D&D?" I played a kind of a homebrew campaign that was set in Fallout.
There is an actual Fallout TTRPG, just so you're aware.
I'm pretty sure that there is. I don't think that the guy who was leading the game knew that it existed, because we definitely weren't working out of a manual for this one. But that was really, really interesting. It was set quasi in the events of New Vegas.
Hmm.
And I would have loved to have continued that campaign beyond like the 3 or 4 sessions that we had, but all of us were graduate students, so working on your master's degree and either also working full-time or part-time on top of that, you quickly lose time and energy for role-playing games most of the time.
Yeah. I think there are quite a few different sci-fi games I know of. I haven't played any, but I've been collecting a number of them. There's Starfinder, there's Cyberpunk, there's Coriolis Effect, there's
I feel like I've
Mothership.
heard of Coriolis effects.
It's a pretty popular one in the space. There's quite a few different one. I was at my favorite game store earlier today, and it had a whole like 2 or 3 shelves that were just different sci-fi based TTRPG. So there's definitely ones out there. Warhammer 40k is an interesting system to look at because it's more of what's known as a war game instead of a role playing game. I mean, there's definitely role playing there, and there's a lot of lore in 40k, but it's more about the strategic movements of your army, and like you're working with a bigger group of men and moving them around over just one character and role playing that one character. But there definitely are a lot of games that are more sci-fi based, and there's definitely been a lot of adaptations for really popular games set in kind of sci-fi setting. I mean, Legends of Adventures just recently released a full-on sci-fi setting set
I
in
back
5th
that.
edition. Really? Huh.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm getting the Game Master manual.
That sounds like fun. You'll have to tell
Yeah.
me how that is.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. I really want to kind of get into that particular style, and actually after having watched them play a little bit of Eternal Rhapsody, and I got a little bit into their Kickstarter that actually helped to inspire one of the mini arcs in the sequel to Monarch Mercenaries Autonomy.
Ooh, nice.
Because I was like, yeah, you know what, this definitely needs to happen.
Right. Kilderman says, apologies if this was asked, what are the favorite systems you guys have played? Have you played Exalted, Call of Cthulhu, or Pendragon? Unfortunately, I haven't played any of those, but they all sound like fun in their own regard.
I have played not Call of Cthulhu, but I've played a board game that, if I recall correctly, actually predates Call of Cthulhu.
Really?
But it's Lovecraftian. It is so dang good. Holy cow. Like the Lovecraftian space for role-playing games, and this board, and even though it's a board game, it is also role-playing based, because you've got pre-made characters that you're supposed to kind of act as throughout the game, and it's terrifying. It is a terrifying system to work with. So it's like, if you're a fan of horror, and again, I've not played Call of Cthulhu, but I've played a game very similar to it, and I had an absolute blast.
Nice.
If I got the chance to actually sit down and do Call of Cthulhu with a party, I would probably really enjoy myself.
I'd be interested. I'm not usually too good with horror personally, but like Call of Cthulhu has a lot of popularity to it. Like there's a reason it's as popular as it is what I mean. And I'm really curious about it about it, especially because like I just found out the other day, apparently Call of Cthulhu is the most popular TTRPG in Japan at the moment. And I'm like, dang, that's fascinating.
It doesn't surprise me because Japanese horror culture is so Lovecraftian in its own way, but it's still distinct.
Yeah.
There are specific rules to Japanese horror that differ from Lovecraftian horror, but it has such a similar vibe, and I can imagine that the Japanese find it really interesting. Which, man, I'm going to restrain myself from going down that particular route because after having watched today's episode of Dada-san, I'm like, oh, this is so good.
Yeah, I definitely have looked into some other games. I have the TTRPG rulebook for a game called Arkham Horror, which, like, the mechanics in that one are actually really fascinating in my opinion. I'm really curious to see more of that one, and I'll have to look into Call of Cthulhu as well. All right, let's get back to it because I'm running out of time.
Yeah, I know you're running out of time. Just real quick to answer Lorraine's question. Working on the Cruzy analysis video. I'm hoping to have it done very soon. I'm not going to give any promises on the exact day, but I'm shooting for a Sunday release. Is what I'm right now gunning for. I made excellent strides today, but I can't guarantee what Saturday is going to do to me. All right, but yeah, let's get back into it because Scott's here only for a limited time. So next slide.
Yep.
Okay. Structure and resolution mechanics. What do we want to have included in this game to make it feel like we're both playing a game and living in the Frieren universe? What do we want to use for RNG, dice, or other classes, races, other character options?
Yep.
I mean, I'll say this. I think that one of the things that really makes Frieren stand out as a story is that there are very few magical races. You can find dwarves, and you can find dwarves more readily than you can find elves, but dwarves are not an everyday occurrence. And meeting an elf is like whoa, where did you come from?
Yeah.
Kind of a deal. And so I think that obviously, like, every role-playing game is up to the whims and desires of the people playing it. But I think that, like, for instance, in terms of like assembling a party, there should be a note to the game master and to the players saying that, like, put yourself kind of in the shoes of this world. What would it be like? You almost would never find a party full of dwarves and elves. Dwarves and elves. So if you do go with all fantasy races, then consider building in way more social drawbacks to that particular kind of a team.
Yeah.
Just because you're such oddities.
Right. Well, and that's going to be
so.
Possibly a major part of the backstory that's being defined in the characters that, like, you're making. So that's definitely part of the structure of the game you're going to have to consider is like, okay, if you're choosing an elf, if you're choosing a dwarf or over a human, what's the backdrop? Like, what's going to limit you in that way? Dwarves, I love all the dwarves that we've met, but they've all been they each have something they're really focused in on, to the detriment of other things going on around them. So that could definitely be part of their story. Elves are very stone-faced. It's hard to read their emotions. It's hard for people to connect with them.
Unless they're Croft.
Huh?
Unless it's Croft.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, true. It's hard for people to connect with them unless they're able to stick around them for long periods of time. And so that could be part of the background and the social, like, aspect you're going into it. But humans, they're going to have their own weaknesses as well.
Yeah.
So like choosing one over the other, it's not going to like the idea is to make it so it's balanced. So it's like, oh, you don't have everybody just choosing human every time. It's like, oh, let's give everybody the chance to be what they want. Because like in the end of the day, like this is still based on a lot of like the heroic fantasy
Hmm.
tropes. And so like giving people a chance to be that hero in some form or another, um, I say don't limit that option. Though, yeah, having
Here's
it made so you're like, oh, maybe just one elf in the party, I would make sense.
Yeah, I think it'd be one of those things that like you just you make it as a note saying you can make it all elves or a combination of mostly elves and dwarves, but consider the world that you're in.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and so like it encourages the players to combine their desire to be heroes and be unique
hmm,
with actually fitting into this world.
right,
And that can be very rewarding,
right.
making that compromise. I think one of the big questions actually to ask in terms of races is, what if someone wants to play as a demon?
That would, yeah, that's a definitely interesting option right there, and it would have to be entirely up to the DM. So
Mm-hmm.
possibly including an option there, or having an option be where like, oh yeah, it's a complete demon party. It would be a completely different story
A
at
totally
that
demon
point.
party would be amazing to play as. Actually, it's like we all get to be evil. It's and we don't even have to come with convoluted backstories about why.
Yeah. Um, Kiel Lorenz, I really like your point here. So great points, especially on the uniqueness of characters. How do you strike the balance between giving every character time to shine with your predetermined story? Because like screen time is always important. Always giving the players the opportunity to actually role play to represent their
Mm-hmm.
character. Because like I've definitely been in games where like I haven't been able to express the character as much as I'd like, and so I mean a lot of that is based off of who's running the game, the GM, and what they're doing, and if they're actually paying attention to everybody getting a chance to have that screen time. But having ways to focus on that, and I have an idea on something for this, but we could talk about that in a second. Um,
Say real quick to like pull on an example. Coming back to the Inverted Manor campaign,
mm-hmm,
um, one of the things that one of the things I tried to do as a dungeon master was let all of you have your chance to have your say and do
mm-hmm,
your own thing, which is how you guys threw so many of my plans under the bus because I gave you guys that freedom. That helps.
yeah,
That helps. Now then, sometimes in certain games there might be a player or two who kind of try to hijack the narrative. That's where you as the game master need to be very aware of everyone at the table and try to give everyone at the table a chance to do something for their character that will be special for them. And so you incorporate aspects of that into the story. And in the Inverted Manor, for instance, Danielle's character, because of her background and her ability to like perform these seances and whatnot, she initiated kind of the countdown to going up against the BVEG. And she also had some really epic moments as well. Semantic was on a quest to find out how to get the voices back for um, crud, the species of bird, the ones that mimic everything. Semantic is the only one of his kind who retains his speech,
yeah.
and so he's trying to figure out why. And then for Lennox, Lennox just needed drug induced insane shenaniganery, and so I presented opportunities for all the characters to do that. Unfortunately, I did rob Scott at least twice that I can remember of opportunities for Lennox to impale people with his sword tail, but yeah,
Hey, it happens. It
it
happens.
happens. But yeah, if you can, it's all about being aware of who the players' characters are and giving and by knowing again their backstories, their personalities and everything, what they're aiming for, and especially for Frieren in a very narrative character based story, having those character sheets where it's all about who they are as individuals is very, very helpful, because then you can design encounters and opportunities that will hopefully get those players far more engaged and give them the chance to be in the spotlight.
Right. Well, and I think having a story that like leans into finding more about the character and having it be like having the characters evolve in that way, like get better at things, get better at handling social differences and situations, be able to overcome their weaknesses, like we see Stark do. We see all the characters do, honestly. Giving like have that be baked into the actual like mechanics and structure of the game, where like yeah, when we started you weren't that good at this, but you've definitely gotten a whole lot better overcoming that strength. And I think I have an idea on kind of a fun way to go about that, and it would lean into this like the actual resolution mechanics of the game, because your resolution mechanic, that's going to be what decides like a roll. So in D&D, the resolution mechanic is you roll a d20, you add a relevant number, and that number like, and if it rolls over a number just set by the DM, you pass. And every game's got a different resolution mechanic. But like what decides where either you pass or fail something that's happening in the game. And there's one game I find fascinating because it's actually the Avatar: The Last Airbender tabletop role-playing game, which allows you to it basically has a kind of what's known as a meta currency that allows you to define it. What's the right way to describe this? It plays into your character's like motivations and goals, but like if you're like too stressed out, if you're too frustrated, that can take you out of the scene that's happening as well. And so having something a little similar to that, having this meta currency that like you're able to use as like, oh, I think my character's ready to overcome one of their issues. Like, let's roleplay this out, and I'm going to spend this meta currency to have it happen.
I was actually going right before you said it. I was going to suggest something kind of like that there is a currency, or that you've got like, for instance, so many chits or so many coins that you can put towards certain things. Like you've basically got this pool, and I'd say it's almost more kind of like your skill or luck.
Yeah.
For it, and you could actually break it down. It's like, okay, this is going to be like so many luck coins or points. Yeah. There's going to be so many skill points towards this. And actually, what made me think of that first is that there's a 1980s board game based in the Warring States period in Japan. And it's and you have to know how to run the economics of your coins, because you can have some amazing armies and they could do diddly squat because you don't have any coin. Like, coin is what runs that game.
Yeah.
And so while I think that even within Frieren, there's probably a place for dice to like be a part of it, especially when we think of combat and everything. As you said earlier, like, we kind of want to preserve like the cinematic quality. And so like, I think that this is where like having that meta currency would be really helpful in kind of like boosting what the characters can do. But then again, you only have so much.
Yeah.
And so you, again, thinking strategically, economically.
Yeah.
Rather than just let the dice say what it says. Because, I mean, these are heroes. Heroes make their own destiny if they have enough strength.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do agree with that. I think having a dice setup would be nice, but not necessarily the like same old D20 thing. I like the idea in this case of having a dice pool, so you've got a number of different dice, and you want, instead of having to roll over, because like that just adds extra stats we're having to come up with, have it roll under, and based off of your backstory, if you're looking at something you need to do is like, oh, I want to do this, and because of my backstory I have experience in something similar to this, let me try that. So it's up to the DM at this point. It's going to decide how many dice you can roll, and you're able to pick from that dice a number that's under the determined number by the DM to decide like how that rolls forward. But then like, say, hey, you fail this. Okay, I want to use this as an opportunity to grow, to like progress my character, to role play this out. Let's use some of that meta currency.
Yeah. Ooh, man, I like that.
Or on the other side, hey, I win. Like, I passed this roll. Let's use a meta currency to really make this shine.
Yeah.
So, like, Stark's battle against Rivale, like, when he does that flash attack right at the end that finally takes him out, that would be an example of that.
Oh my gosh. You know, the battle against Revolta, Stark and Genau are using up all of their meta currency just to stay alive in that fight.
Right.
It is, oh my gosh, that is amazing. It'd be fun. It'd be absolutely fun to plan this out.
So Key Lorenz keeps dropping bombs in the chat. I love these. Says, you guys are doing great. Sorry for the fan praise. Well, we love the fan praise, so keep it up.
Yes,
do you think systems with more rules, say Dungeons and Dragons, are better or worse than games with fewer rules, like Powered by the Apocalypse? And he says, they say, as a player, I find more rules give me more room to feel empowered. And I think it depends on the player. I don't think there's right or wrong in this situation. It's entirely based off of what you enjoy more. So with Killer Ends, as a player, like, you like having the more rules, more mechanics, because it allows you to really get into the game and figure out the nitty gritty little details that's going to make you really stand out and be the hero in the story. That is a super valid way of going about the game. But also having a game that's fewer rules, that's more focused on pushing the story, having a narrative, that's, I think, is also fantastic in its own regard. And I think it's more a matter of personal preference at this point. And honestly, after looking through all the games and playing what few games I have played, I like both for different reasons. I like the ones that have more rules because I'm able to like really customize out like what I want the character to do. That's why I really liked D&D 3.5 edition, because there were so many different character options that I could pick through, and I could really customize what I want my character to do. But like in other games, like that that horror kind of homebrew setup you did this last October, where I was playing the Ninja Maid. It was more about the story, more about pushing forward. And so it's a lot of fun to go either way, in my opinion. But yeah, 3.5 is a lot of fun. It takes a lot of math and it takes a bit of learning, but that's what I learned on, and I really enjoy D&D 3.5. But yeah, it's a good point. Like, it's definitely having more rules versus less rules. Like, I think more than anything, it's personal preference at that point. Yeah,
and a personal preference, and also kind of the goal of the game.
Yeah.
For the game that you've been designing, I feel like so far with what you've shared with me, this is your game is definitely not going to be anywhere near as loaded up as D&D is. And as you brought up, it's because you want you want the players to experience these grand moments, which the more rule, like there is a bit of a trade-off. So like thinking about how rules can make you empowered, rules make you empowered by learning how to game all of the stipulations that are given to you,
Yeah.
which is very personally rewarding when you know you're like, I know the system, I know how to game it. This is where like the mid maxing comes into effect, but it then requires also a little bit more time to get there, especially like in D&D, because you got to level up, you got to have the right equipment and everything, you got to know how to multi-class and so forth, or know how to make the most of the one class you have if you're decide not to multi-class.
Yeah.
Whereas other games are like, no, we want to get you kind of to that point where you're feeling really epic a whole lot quicker. Or maybe it's not even like you want to feel epic. Maybe like you go back to horror stories. It's all about the survival.
Yeah.
And so in those kinds of situations, you actually operate on just a few known and unknown rules.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest is left to character interaction, because that helps to heighten the tension. So it's also kind of the goal of the game itself that stipulates whether it's going to have more rules or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a big part of it. So that's a very, very interesting conversation to have, like, in this space. Like, do you want more rules? Do you want less rules? Yeah, there's a lot to think about there. So thanks for focusing on that, Killer Reds. If you do like a game that has more rules, I would definitely look into. There's a sci-fi game known as Lancer that is basically the ultimate mech customization tabletop role-playing game. It has so many rules on how to make an absolutely epic mech and like level up your pilot to do even better in that mech. It's an awesome game, and I love the art for it. So, last thing.
Real quick, because we haven't really actually addressed this question right here. What do we want to have to include in this game so it feels both like we're in the game but also just playing a game? I think that the character sheet is kind of critical to that, because the role playing is really what pulls you into the universe,
right?
And the scenarios that are created and everything. But in order to feel like you're actually playing a game, having that character sheet kind of in front of you, and how that is implemented, so that way you're not just simply ad-libbing your way through the game, but that you're forced to return to the sheets. That is what kind of gives you the break from play acting to playing.
Yeah. I think in this case, what has to happen is we need to define what's known as a gameplay loop. So a gameplay loop is going to be like, what's all of the necessary actions you need to play in the game to take your turn, basically. And so it's like, okay, you get to your turn, like you get to your chance to do something. In this case, it's like, okay, I want to do this, or like I want to problem solve for this. What my backstory leads me to something that might be able to solve this problem. Well, let's give it a try. You roll the dice. If you're able to get that roll based off of like all of the stuff you're figuring out with it, then you have a success, you have a failure, or you could define it as like, oh, kind of, you just barely succeeded or you just barely failed. Like defining that, and then how you roleplay going forward, I think is going to be the focus of that gameplay loop in that sense. And so, and we were also talking about like using that meta currency and like using that to progress your character and having some reward or consequence involved with what happens in that gameplay loop.
Yeah.
I think so for Lorraine, I think there is a Transformers role-playing game. I remember seeing it somewhere. I haven't picked it up myself, but it does. I just like collecting role-playing games at this point. I want them all.
Gotta catch 'em all, RPGs.
Yep. One other thing I want to talk about real quick. Do we want to do classes?
I would like real quick. I'd say I'd say it's kind of a given. You got your
Yeah.
warrior, your priest. You got your warrior, your priest, your mage, and the hero.
Well, and that's my issue here. The warrior, the mage, the priest, they're standalone enough. They're unique enough. They stand on their own 2 feet.
Mm-hmm.
What's unique about the hero in this case to make it its own class?
I think that one. So we had this discussion
Mm-hmm.
during our season 2 reviews, especially looking at the hero of the South, because we're like, okay, so like the hero of the South and Himmel both seem to just have like an incredible amount of charisma and self confidence. They seem to be stronger than your typical human.
Mm-hmm.
And in the case of the hero in the Southern Hero, he also had a special ability.
I think that's the case. I was thinking about this earlier this week. Defining a hero class is going to be a little trickier than the other ones because, like mages, yeah, you have these really awesome spells, and you can have a specialization into a specific spell to power it up. The warrior, you're going to be super tough. You can take a lot of hits. You can deal out a lot of damage with whatever weapon you choose. Um, and then the priest, like you're able to heal. You have a few like crowd control effects. Like there's definitely going to be options in, and potentially you could learn to time travel too, and that's in Frieren lore. I'm sorry,
Which
what?
is insane.
Anyway, but
So,
then the hero, I think the matter is going to be you're going to have some kind of special ability, and I do agree with Kill Lorenz on this. Like Himmel, it's his kindness. I think honestly, his ability to increase his party's morale and the people he's like helping out increase their morale. That's his special ability.
I think I think that one of the ways that you could balance the hero, because the hero is also a class that could very easily become broken. Like I think any player who's willing to give it a little bit of thought, like Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel's husband, give him the chance to play the hero, and he will have an absolutely broken character after about 24 hours of thought. Uh, I think that I think that um, that you like bringing up, for instance, Himmel's kindness
Mm-hmm.
is absolutely his strong suit. Everyone remembers Himmel because he was so good. He was so kind. He would always go out of his way to help other people. The Southern hero, people remember him because he's just almost this indomitable badass. That's just like,
Mm-hmm.
wait, what? He had such a great ability in terms of being able to just see ahead.
Right.
And,
So
and but
for
oh
for Darkest Daydreams, we're not ending the stream, though I might have to leave a little bit early. Lars did say he was planning on staying on a bit longer.
yeah, yeah. So don't worry too much, Story Say Dreams. Uh, but when but so there's yeah, I think it would then come down to the character building where you have to ask yourself, okay, so what exactly would I want to accomplish with the hero class?
Mm-hmm.
Am I looking to be a socially strong hero or a physically dominant hero? And and so I think that like I think it would be good for the game master to have some suggestions from the manual of these are things that the hero can like have in terms of like really good unique abilities, but then you take a hit somewhere else in order to balance
Mm-hmm.
out your character, or you could maybe just have like simple boosts to various physical abilities, but you are really good at something social.
Yeah.
which would be very good for all the social encounters.
Yeah.
And so that way you tailor the hero for a specific purpose.
Yeah.
So that way
Well,
the hero's not just the all around like, I am He-Man, I can do whatever I want. I mean, He-Man
right.
doesn't actually sound that way, but
Well,
why
one idea.
why wasn't Schwarzenegger as He-Man? Dang it.
One idea I've had, kind of on this too, just barely, is what if hero wasn't a class? You could, and like have it set up so like any of these classes could be the hero. And so when you take on this hero aspect, you're like, okay, I'm gonna take a hit in some other way, but like I'm gonna gain this really cool special ability that's gonna be able to help me like in other ways. Because like because like we see a lot of what's going on with like Himmel. We looked at what happened with the Southern Hero. Well, in the current like time frame, you could see Frieren as the current hero. Like her social skills, not necessarily the best in some cases, but like there's no one necessarily who could beat her in like in all of the crazy magic she's able to do, and she's got a unique ability in how she's just able to influence mana directly.
Mm-hmm.
So like you could have it play out like that in some way.
This also begs a comparison to Kraft, and we don't know who his companion was, or at least I don't, because Kraft is a monk, and everyone's like, a monk? What the heck?
I don't either.
Yeah, it's like what on earth does that mean? And it's kind of implied that it's just what it is. He is so physically like capable and intimidating. He doesn't need magic, and he's not your typical warrior who's going to brute force his way through everything. He's going to use his mind and his reflexes to wreck you. And we know, thanks to the ancient statues around the continent, that he was one of the original heroes.
Yeah. Yeah, he definitely saved the world in some way or fashion. It's another one of those stories that you kind of only see a little bit of in Frieren, that like you could like in the game you could take the time to look into more, or you could keep moving towards another goal. Like it's entirely up to the players at that point. It's like, okay, you have this really immersive, interesting world. What parts of it are you actually going to explore?
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then let's go to that last slide.
Last one, and really quick, Darkest Daydreams. That's a great idea. I love the idea of turning the souls either from Undertale or Deltarune into a D&D party. That'd be awesome.
Yep. So honestly, and I'm gonna have to leave here pretty soon.
Yeah,
I've got a really early morning, but just wanted to kind of wrap up this part of it, because I'm sure Lars is gonna have plenty to talk about.
Naturally.
All you need to do from here on, once you've defined what themes you're writing in, what your pillars are, what your like narrative or mechanics focus is, your structure and your resolution mechanics, and like all of the game structure and everything, you just have to write it out. That's literally all you need. Where I'm at in the game that I've designed, because I've got the rough draft done, but I've gone back and looked through it, and all it needs is more at this point. I mean, yeah, it's going to need a bunch of editing, sure, but I need to expand on the game structure. I need to expand on the lore. I need to expand a bunch of the tables to look at for like items and the crafting, and like write out more detail on like the spells you're able to cast in the game, etc., etc., etc. Once you have like the concept and like all of the major details figured out, you just write it out. That's all you have to do when you're making your own game at that point. And then everything after that, it's editing, it's figuring out artwork, it's figuring out how to publish your work. And I'm like I said, I'm still a novice on that aspect. I haven't gotten to that point in my journey along those lines, but everything we've talked about today has been stuff I've been thinking about. It's been what I've been studying. It's what I've been focused on for the last 7 months. And so, like, this is how you get started in this process. And I love the concept of like trying to think through and figuring out like Frieren and up like all these different like awesome anime. And so I'm really tempted. It probably won't come out until like late next month, but I'm really thinking of sitting down and making a good 30-minute video on what an Apothecary Diaries TTRPG would look like.
Oh my gosh. That would be so much fun.
Because it would be a completely different game to what we talked about here, and definitely completely different from like D&D. So,
That would be so insane. Holy cow. So skills based. So skills
well,
based.
skills based, but like I'm looking at pillars and you're like, okay, investigation, you're gonna have some kind of specialty as
Diplomacy.
your character. Yeah, diplomacy is gonna be a major part of this. There's going to be like a lot of really interesting structure to that game
Sabotage.
that you wouldn't necessarily see in like a very combat focused game.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely, I'm definitely going to start working on that project. But until then, I will see you all later in another video, and I'll definitely have to join Lars again for another live stream when I can.
Yeah, it's been absolutely great.
Yeah, and I'm going to have to head out.
Hey, you have a great night, Scott.
We'll do.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the great conversation. I had a ton of fun. And I want to thank everybody in the chat for great conversation as well. I've had a good time.
Yeah. Say keep it up, and hope to have you back for another live stream, Scott. And we'll also at some point have to do another collab video. I know we're giving ourselves a rest from the weekly anime reviews, but we'll have to get together, do something again soon.
Come up with something good. All right, I better head out. So, have a wonderful night, everyone, and Okini.
Cheers. All right. So, I guess to kind of round things off, at least from my perspective, as someone who's not been designing a game, Scott's the one with the real nuts and bolts knowledge there. I just come back around and say this is that if we were going to convert Frieren into a tabletop RPG, that again, it is 100% all about the characters. And that's one of the things that's made D&D very difficult for a lot of newcomers to the game, is that sometimes they're not sure how they should actually be playing their character, and they get too caught up in the math. I don't mind getting caught up in the math for D&D, but for some people they need more than just that. They need the character, and sometimes there's certain dungeon masters who don't explore characters enough to make them truly fulfilling. And it's one of the things that's really frustrated me in a couple of campaigns, is where the characters fall by the wayside and it all just becomes about advancing the plot and leveling up, which I feel if you want to do that, I'll have you go and play a Souls game, and you can have all the fun you want suffering to advance the plot and level yourself up. Frieren at its heart is an introspective story of characters, of learning, as Frieren retraces the steps of her past to have one last meeting with the man of her past, Himmel, who deeply loved her, and as she's coming to better understand not just him, but her feelings for him. And through that experience, not only is she growing as a person, but we see her developing all these amazing, beautiful relationships with all these other characters. That's, at least for me, one of the things that makes Frieren just such a beautiful story. And if you want to be able to capture that in a game, it's got to be all about the characters. And as Nathan once said, and as I love to repeat, a story lives or dies by its characters. Amen. All right, so Tyler Goodman, I know you've been dropping this stuff here about A24. So A24 seemingly not going ahead with their earlier decision to implement AI. That's according to Check Out Discussed Film over on Twitter. I'll have to try to give that a look later. I am very happy about that because when I think it was you who actually shared that that A24 was going to start using AI, and I saw an article about that. I was just like, oh come on, that just so flies in the face of AI of A24 really trying to empower storytellers to tell their own zany, unique stories, even if they're not necessarily the most marketable. And I absolutely good for them. And also, kind of on that point, in terms of empowering creators to tell their own stories, even if they're not all that marketable, Obsession is a good example of a story that, from a large studio's perspective, they might have been like, why would we ever throw money into that? And yet it did very, very well. Hollywood is already learning the wrong lessons from Obsession. And I also think that a lot of commentator pundits on YouTube are also taking away the wrong lessons from Obsession. Yes, YouTubers have got some really great ideas for stories. Yes, we should empower them. At the same time, not every YouTuber has a really good idea. I'm looking at you, Skibidi Toilets. I will be shocked if that is a good movie. I will be utterly shocked. So the answer is not give all this money to YouTubers to make movies. The answer is to empower bold storytellers to tell a good story and learn to do it on a budget. And Obsession did it on a budget. It found its audience. It's done very well, and as a result, they've made loads of money, and that is loads of money that should be invested in other similar projects, not necessarily carbon copies of Obsession, which is what Hollywood's going to try to do, but again, empowering bold storytellers to tell interesting stories and let those and empower those stories to find their audiences. And Tyler Goodman says the new Murder Drones short now has 2 million views. That's great. I love that Murder Drone still has a very active and alive fan base, and I'm very glad that that Glitch has not forgotten our lovely Murder Drones. Killhorn says, "Okay, now I have to ask, if you could make a movie or anything, what would it be?" Oh boy, if I could make a movie, okay. I guess Kill Lawrence, will it down because I've got loads of different responses to that. Select if you would want me to adapt if you would want me to adapt one of my own stories, or adapt someone else's story, or come up with something completely new. So if you want something completely new, adapt someone else's story, or adapt one of my own, because I've got different answers for all of that. For all of that. Go nerdy, it's okay. Man, oh man. All right, let's see here. If you have time, all three. Well, let's see here. I don't know if I would necessarily. Okay, this is obviously not a movie. And I'm not sure how wed I am to this idea, but in terms of adapting someone else's work, I've been thinking of Deltarune. What if you tried to make Deltarune into a movie? Now, one of the difficulties in that is that everyone plays the game differently. This is one of the hardest things about adapting any video game into a movie, because either the story is so simplistic that why does it need a movie when you could just play the game? And if it's so big, how are you going to make a movie manageable because it took an entire massive game to tell the story? But one of the things that I would do if I were if I were to make a Deltarune movie, would honestly need to be a show, because covering all 7 chapters would require way more than a movie could do. Uh, I would tell 2 different timelines of Deltarune happening at the same time. One kind of going backwards as the other moves forwards. And it would begin with the weird route. We would get to see the weird route at its end at the very beginning. Have Chris be all like, what if I had a chance? What if I could go back and do it all over again? And then see the normal routes played out, its main story beats, yada yada yada, and then see the weird route kind of coming backwards to meet it. And I think you could preserve the horror of the weird route and the mystery of both routes doing that. And you could then play around with the fact that this is a game mechanics, different save files, and so forth. But if I were to do, but that's kind of like more of a show approach. If I were to do a movie of someone else's work, say I'm right now looking at some of the books that I've got lined up next to me. I would. I didn't realize I still had that bit of footage here and there. Anyway, the dinosaur bird. I think, man, because there's so many great books out there to adapt. I would try doing Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. I know it's not Brandon Sanderson's best work, but that would be such a fun movie to do animated. And yes, it is inspired on Your Name. So people be like, oh, this is just a Your Name knockoff. But there's enough that makes Yumi and the Nightmare Painter its very own story, that even though it's a body swapping story of a person who at night fights against nightmares by creating magical paintings, versus a person who she is supposed to resonate with the spirits of the land by performing these rituals involving stones and creating stone structures that impress the spirits, and the spirits present boons to the people. That you could do some really, really fun stuff with that. Plus the back and forth is a little bit more interesting, because rather than one just being in the other one's body, kind of being left alone, the other person's spirit is there, kind of like in the back seats, being all like, hey, so this is how you're supposed to do things, and the other person's like, yeah, I'm going to do something different. And it's really sweet. And so I'd love to do Yumi and the Nightmare Painter animated, and I think it could just be really, really good. So no, Common Craft and Starlight, you have not missed the whole stream. You have unfortunately missed the conversations with Scott. Scott had to leave early because he's got work really early in the morning. Now then, if I were to adapt one of my own stories that I have written, a show idea, Bleeds Demon Steel. As a movie, this would require a slightly larger budget just because it's got dragons. But I do Tumble Teller. My story about the performing dragon Mikulirian on her very first solo performance. I think that would be very entertaining for a lot of people to see a world full of dragons, and have the dragons not acting in your typical dragon way, where they're far more sophisticated, they've got professions, but that you also have this really interesting, dangerous world where dragons reign supreme, but not even the dragons who are at the who are at the apex of it all. I mean, they themselves quarrel. There are kingdoms, there are grudges, there's assassinations, there's all kinds of machinations that are playing out. And Miku is just barely touching on these much larger things that are happening in the world, which is a fun wink and nod to one of the books I'll be writing next year. But it's its own self-contained story. I would have to tweak the ending if I were just going to make it a standalone. But I think that'd be really fun for people to see. Kill Lawrence, you bought some of my books. Oh well, thank you for checking them out. Yeah, Tumble Teller. Boop, let me put it into the. I'll put the name here into the chat. Conquest says, does it count as a body swap if one of the characters perceives their original body rather than the other one they are in, while the other transforms into their new body into a copy of their original one? Yeah. I think that's maybe more of a doppelganger situation. But it depends on how you execute it. Also, one of my stories, if one of my stories were to be adapted, it would either have to be animation or only my isekai story idea. My vampire one would work. The other ones are way too crazy effects wise to do it live action. Yeah, no, live action. It's one of I will say this. I am peeved that Mistborn is going to be live action. I do not have faith that Mistborn is going to look good when it is adapted. And that is a crying shame, because the Mistborn books are so good. But the magic of the Mistborn trilogy is visual in a way that live action will look insanely silly rather than epic. Animation can bridge that uncanny valley and preserve the epicness of the Mistborn magic system and many of its action scenes, while embracing just the supernatural wonky aspect of allomancy. Because like one of the things that will immediately annoy people will be the allomantic lines. So for those of you who've not read Mistborn, allomancers, people who devour metal in order to access certain magical powers, depending on your allomancy, whatever power you're tapping into, you will see blue lines everywhere. If you are a steel pusher or an iron puller, you will immediately see all of these blue lines everywhere that connect you to all of the metal in the vicinity, and you pull on those lines in order to manipulate the metal. Now then, the way that they'll most likely end up doing it, because if you show all those blue lines in live action, it's going to look too busy on screen and it's going to annoy viewers. So most likely they will remove it. But here's the thing, is that if you remove the blue lines, you remove that aspect that makes it so very different from just simply Magneto's manipulation of metal. Because allomancers are not manipulating metal so much as they are reacting to it. And that's just what, and also, oh boy, whenever any of the characters uses Atium is going to look so bad in live action, because you're seeing dozens, if not scores, of shadows of everything going on and all the possibilities of every person's actions. Every action that they could make, you see it all. It's incredibly overwhelming. Also, on top of that, animation could better capture the nuances of pewter users, people who devour and burn pewter in their stomachs, they just become sure, they walk straighter, and they appear larger, even though they actually don't grow in size. And that's something that, how do you make that work in live action without, like, if you, because it'll just be, oh, so and so just decided to straighten their back. Okay, unless you decide it's like, now they've got muscle, oh, like, you'll have to CGI their bodies and it's just gonna look silly. I just don't see how live action allomancy is going to look good. Connor says, yeah, how would they even be able to handle emotional allomancy or electum? Well, that comes down to acting. But yes. And that's the thing, is that people who are noobs to Mistborn are going to, they're going to have a hard time with the magic system unless it is very, very well handled. Yes, Sanderson is writing the script. Sanderson is not a script writer. So this is going to be a real test of his writing skills. And I hope and pray that he has been working with script doctors, because otherwise this is not going to go over well. And the effects team has to be in lockstep with Sanderson's vision, and they have to put the money and time in to make it look good, or it is going to look so silly. A freaking A-team, that would be a nightmare. Exactly. Concraft says, I remember there's a scene where the character uses A-team near a crowd and almost gets overwhelmed with even the mental boost A-team gives. Exactly. Concraft says, or allomancy to detect allomancy, or copper clouds. Yep. Tin eyes will be a fun one. Actually, that one, tin eyes, people who burn tin, that would probably be the easiest, especially later on for Spook. Oh my gosh, yes. When Spook ruins his vision by burning too much tin, that I could see that actually working out really well. Or also when you get a perspective of what Steel Inquisitors, how they see the world, that would look really, really awesome. That is something that CGI absolutely can do. But again, you have to invest the time and money to make that work and look good. Otherwise, it's just going to be silly. And the thing is, is that we're at a point now in our filmmaking capabilities, and Apple is producing this. Apple's got the money. If they can't make it look good, then really at this point it's all like, we should have called it quits back in the early 2000s, because the early 2000s CGI still continues to hold up. And we've made leaps and bounds beyond that, but like now only like 1 out of every 20 movies looks like 1 out of every 20 memorable movies, I should say, even looks good in terms of CGI. Whereas 1 out of every 20, whereas out of the early 2000s movies, every memorable movie that you can think of, you go back and see their CGI, it still looks decent, or even still looks amazing. Like the Mummy's got cheesy CGI, but it works so dang well. And of course, the Lord of the Rings special effects are just incredible. Holy dang. The Matrix still holds up. So yeah. But coming back to it, so the third one, if I were to make a story for the big screen that has not been written yet, but would be one of my own ideas. The Mummy is a national treasure. I 100% agree. The Mummy is a national treasure. Such a good movie. Such a good movie. And I will argue this: The Mummy Returns is really, really fun. Is it as good as the first? No, but it's still really, really fun. But let's hear. If I were to do a completely original story, I do have some original stories in mind that I've never written down. But one that I think would work really well for the big screen is a story idea that I've called Steel Bullet. Steel Bullet is a superhero story, and Steel Bullet is the name of one of the main characters, or that's a superhero name. And Steel Bullet is a reformed gangster in Chicago. He was a young man in over his head in some gang, got gunned down in a turf war, and he should have been paralyzed, if not outright killed. But his superhero powers kicked in and helped to stabilize his body. His basically steel bullets is his power is that once his abilities kick in, he's basically steel. He's as durable as steel. He can be as strong as steel. He can enhance his physical abilities by using kind of the tension of steel. So he can propel himself really quickly. So it makes him seem like he's going super fast when really he doesn't have super speed. So it would be kind of like a short distance kind of thing, like a real sprinter kind of a hero. And he's reformed, and thanks to the help of agencies who seek out heroes, try to reform people who've done bad. Steel Bullet has turned his life around, and now he's one of Chicago's most beloved heroes. And uh, and the story finds him now going up against a villain called the Hangman, and the Hangman seems to know Steel Bullets and taunts him with memories of his past. And he's like, who could this be? Everyone from my gang, from my old gang, is either dead or in prison. On top of that, the agency that recruited Steel Bullet worked really, really hard to scrub the events of his past. Like they'll say, "Oh yeah, no, he was once this, but now he became this." But like they've worked real hard to make sure that the public hasn't looked too closely into the events leading up to Steel Bullet being initially injured and then becoming a superhero. But this individual Hangman seems to know all this stuff, and he starts bringing Steel Bullet's dirty laundry from his past into the forefront. Sorry, I had to take a drink of water right there. One of the other things that would then happen within the story is that there is a vigilante who is called Poltergeist. Poltergeist is a Poltergeist is a superhuman who has a very unenviable power. Every person that he's ever killed, he has an imprint of them that operates as a specter. So he basically so he has collected specters of all of these different criminals that he's murdered, and he utilizes these specters to go and hunt down other wrongdoers, and he's just tormented though by his collection. And so Steel Bullet, along with other superheroes in Chicago, are trying to find the Poltergeist and see if they either have to bring him to justice or if there's a way to reform him. And so, in the hunt to find the Poltergeist, that is where the Hangman comes in and begins haunting Steel Bullet and tries to ruin his good name. And so, Steel Bullet will then end up having to work alongside the Poltergeist in order to hunt down Hangman and bring him to justice. And so that's the basic story idea that I think would be fun to see have that turned into a movie. Is Steel Bullet series released yet? No, I haven't actually sat down to pen Steel Bullet. Steel Bullet has been a fun idea that's been in the back of my head for years now. As just kind of like, hey, if I were to do a superhero series, this is kind of what I would do. And I think it would be a whole lot of fun to have kind of this journey of a reformed bad guy turned superhero, or not even necessarily a bad guy, but just a reformed thug turned amazing superhero who the city of Chicago loves him. He's turned his life around in such a good way, and now his past comes back to haunt him. And in order to beat the specter of his past, he has to kind of breach his code of ethics to a certain degree by working with a vigilante, and a vigilante with a really grisly set of powers. So, yeah. Anyways, let's see here. Conqueror says one time I had an idea for a story of a video game where the main thing would be that there are multiple, mostly unrelated stories going on at once, and the player's choices set the main story and genre that game would have. Would be an insane ordeal to pull off, though. It would be, but that sounds really, really fun. I agree with Keel Lawrence. That I love that kind of ambition. That would work really well. And actually, not to steal your thunder there or anything, Common Craft, but I do intend at some point in the future to write my own story based with a video game, and that's going to be an interesting one. I don't know when I'll get around to writing that, in part because I need to make sure that it syncs well with another story, one that I have had on the back burner for years now. This is one of my oldest story concepts. Once after Camille's Harem got organized, and I haven't done anything with it yet, just because I've been so focused on doing the Legend of the Ten Lords, which I have only two more of those books to do. And that's the crazy thing is because those books are so big. The Legend of each book in the Legend of the Ten Lords series is around 300,000 words, and that is a lot. That is a lot of work. So once I'm done with the Legend of the Ten Lords, that actually opens up loads of possibility and time for me, that I can then really start throwing myself at other stories. Gear Witch has been begging for me to do more. Bleed Steam and Steel is begging for its sequel to be completed. I have done a lot of the rough draft for the sequel, but it is so bad. It is so bad. I'm going to have to go back and basically rewrite that entire book. Yikes. Right now working on the sequel to Monarch Mercenaries Autonomy, and gearing up to do Whitefire next year, and later this year I am going to tackle my first Lovecraftian inspired horror book. So yeah. Keel Lawrence, that's a great question. How do you work around burnout? So I'll be honest, I have been struggling with burnout now for well over half a year at this point, which would surprise a lot of people if they see how much I've written even during that time. Uh, but but I used to be able to consistently sit down and write 3,000 to 4,000 words in a sitting, easy, within 2 hours. Boom, there you go. I haven't been able to hit that in almost a year now, because I did burn myself out just doing way too much. So what I have so what one of the things that I do to help out with the burnout is I kind of lower my expectations of how much I'm going to write. I still try to reach those goals, because you got to keep writing. If you pause too long in your writing, you really atrophy very fast. So you got to keep writing, even though burnout sucks so bad. So some of the ways then that I deal with the burnout is I lower my goals in terms of daily and weekly output, so that way I'm just not bashing my head against the screen and the keyboard forever. I also make sure to do some working out. I like to go on long hikes. That really, really helps me out. And then find other creative outlets, because you got to stay creative. So if writing is a real chore, you still got to write a little bit. Just write a little bit. Then go do something else that's fun and creative, like playing D&D, doing painting, drawing, putting together little models, learning something new. So that way you keep your brain engaged, because burnout isn't that you have lost all the energy to do everything that you want. If that's how you're feeling, you're probably dealing with about a depression, and then you got to make sure that you get proper help if that's the case. But usually burnout just means that you are drained in terms of the attention and energy that you can give any one thing, or I should say a particular thing. And so what you just need to do is you need to divert your attention to something else that's healthy to do, that's very positive to do, something that's still creative enough, and then work on it. Do that thing. And you will find yourself quickly regaining energy, health, interest in other things that you'd like to do, and it becomes easier to go back to writing. Now, granted, as I've said, I've been feeling the burnout now for well over half a year, but yet again, as I said, like if you go back and if I were to show you guys how much I've written even during that time, it's still impressive just simply because I try to again divert my attention to other things. I still have writing goals and I try to meet those writing goals, and that's helped me to feel productive, and that also increases my own personal positivity and optimism that allows me to keep going forward. And actually this month I've been feeling really really good. I've been doing a lot of writing, actually. I've been able to, on the average, put out more than 2,000 words per day, which is a really good place to be. And I've been feeling very happy as I've been making progress with my sequel for Monarch Mercenaries. And I'm just discovering so much as I'm writing this book. Oh boy, my initial layout for the story is already changing, and in good ways. So it's made me very excited. Let me quickly then catch up with some of the things you guys have also said right here. Drop me, tell me everything about the horror book. I will once I catch up with some of the other stuff you guys have said right here. I think right now what I will do is write short stories based on the ideas I had for bigger stories, like one where my superhero wakes up having their civilian friend cooking alongside their ghost. Woo, the shock that said friend can cook at all. Yeah, that's awesome. Good advice on the burnout. I write nonfiction for a living, and come home to write fiction sometimes fills me with dread. Woo, I can't always live my personas threes. Burn my dread. You write nonfiction. That's really cool. I mean, I as a trained historian, I've written a lot of nonfiction in the forms of various history papers, research papers, and the likes. I had originally actually thought to write a book about Japanese American history, but that's a long story about why that hasn't turned out, why that book has never gotten completed. Comcast says my magical girl story can also work with making snippets because the magical girl Lena, uh, because the magical girls Elena themselves for a monster of the week style very well. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, no, you could easily then make a series of short stories that you could then later on compile into a much larger story. That would work out really well. Yeah, to avoid burnout, I go read fanfic or play games, practice drawing. Shifting gears can help a lot. Absolutely. TV Con says a quick question: do you ideate, draft your story or pen and paper, or in digital? So I mostly do digital TV account. However, I actually have a lot of notes that I've written down by hand. If I want to get into a certain character, I'll actually write it out by hand. And there have been loads of times where I couldn't write things down digitally. And so so I would just write things down on pieces of paper, and then I compiled all that. So it's kind of like a write down what you can, where you can, and just keep writing. Killorn says, "Whoa, what kind of history? I wanted to do history for a living. Got into law. Woo, woo. Pays. Actually, you know what? I'm going to assume. I'm not going to say outright, but I'm going to assume that law pays better than history. In fact, Lars, I studied East Asian history. Oh, that's really really cool. I studied so in as an undergrad, I was all over the place. I would have loved to have done what one of my professors called comparative warfare history because I love the history of war. But I ended up for my master's degree. I did U.S. history, but I did U.S. history with a focus on the 20th century, and further like niche emphases on Japanese American history and Borderlands history. So I can tell you all different kinds of things about the U.S. Mexican border that are really wonky and crazy. I can also tell you loads of stuff that has never been published in any book about Japanese American history. And I can also tell you why none of that stuff has ever been published. One of the reasons why I do not have a PhD is because I got backstabbed by my professors for daring to write the things that I wrote. Also for other reasons. Oh, my master's program was insane. Uh, Conquest says, hey Lars, any tips to overcoming the shyness of sharing stories? The one thing I managed to post online was the only possible because I was mildly feverish and sleep deprived at the time. I was unable to recreate the mental state I was in when I decided to click the post button. Commoncraft, here's what I'm going to say. In terms, well, thank you, Keel Lawrence. Keep up the faith and keep going. Here's what I'm going to suggest, Commoncraft. If you find it really difficult to put yourself out there, then work with the friends and family that you have who are supportive of your creative endeavors and have them help you with it. Whether they are the ones who end up posting it for you after you share it, or if they just hold your hand proverbially or maybe even literally through the process. But in terms of just the shyness of sharing, it's something that if you find it very, very hard to share that you write, then what I recommend that you do before you even say, how am I going to share my story? Practice telling other people that you write. And you can just drop that as, hey, I'm a writer and I like doing this. Oh, by the way, I like to write these kinds of stories. And you let people know that you like writing. And what you will be surprised to find is that the vast majority of people who hear that you like to write will be supportive or at least encouraging. I have had experiences where people have been discouraging towards my writing, but the vast majority I have found, very surprisingly, I did not expect this, but the vast majority of people, and especially strangers, will tell you that's awesome. I love it when people write. And they might even tell you, I like to write. And they'll ask you what you write. And then suddenly you're in a conversation. And the more that you get into these conversations, telling people that you like to write, that builds up your confidence over time to the point where you get to where you want to share your stories. And I'll say this, like, if you were to go back now, like, it's been the Camille's Harem has been around now for over 10 years. So you would have to go back now quite a ways. But like, let's say you go back and talk to me either right after graduating from high school or right after I came back from my mission. So you're looking at 18 years old to 21, 22 years old me. And if you told me then, Lars, you are going to want to write books for a living, I would be like, that is the stupidest idea you could ever tell me to do. I can't write. I don't like writing. Or I would say, like, I like writing history. I don't like writing fantasy. And I would then follow it up with, I can't write dialogue. And all of my ideas are too insane. No one would ever want to read them. I would have all these excuses and I would be terrified of my inexperience. I can't tell you exactly what got me into starting to write. Some of the very first things that I started writing for fun as fantasy was when I started doing a choose your own horror adventure story just for the fun of Halloween. It's like, I love Halloween. Let's make it fun by having a horror story. I love choose your own adventure stories. What if we made it a choose your own horror story? And it kind of went on from there. And I started posting long ago some snippets of a story. I was garden writing on Facebook because I got bored one day at college, and I just thought of an Amazonian story and just started rolling with it. Never finished it, not even close. But those two things made me feel like, you know what, I kind of like this. I'm never going to tell anyone that I'm doing it, except for the choose your own horror adventure story. But yeah, tappity tap tap, and just kind of grew from there. And I got involved in fan fiction, which I thought was a dirty secret. No one should ever know that I do fan fiction. I've long since grown out of that. Uh, and then it became a date idea. What if you, as a way to communicate with the person you took out on a date, let's write a story together? And that was actually one of the things that got me and Camille talking and was one of the events that led to Camille's Harem becoming a writing group. Um, but and there was one moment as a missionary. Uh, it was when I was in the area of Brook on the Moor, which literally translates to Bridge on the Moor, is what the name of the place was. And me and my mission companion were effectively snowed in. Cabin fever began setting in, and as a way of helping him and me deal with a lot of problems, I wrote a story for him that was just kind of meant to be fun, and it was as a way of eating up time because I was kind of going stir crazy. And so those experiences really helped me just find out, you know what, maybe I do kind of like this. I'll never do it as a profession. This is like a dirty secret. Don't ever tell anyone. And as I started telling people that I write, I got more and more sure of myself in telling these stories, to the point where I was like, you know what, I want this to be my career, telling stories. Comic says, I had struggled for the longest time until I found out about a year ago that despite being shy on the spectrum and having anxiety, I was actually on the more extrovert end. So lack of social interaction was sapping away all of my overtime, even though social interaction often makes me a bit tired. Oof, that's rough. But yeah, no, if you find yourself as someone who needs to interact with other people, then you got to do it, and just find out how you communicate with other people. It's a struggle for everyone. Everyone's got to learn how they communicate. Asgore saying Chris is royalty. Interesting. Yeah, all part of the mentality that leads to Asgore's specific dark world. I'm taking another drink of water right there. Kill Lawrence says what Lars says is an excellent advice. Well, thank you. People are not inclined to remember your failures. They focus on what they like. And the people who do focus on your failures are people that you don't need to worry about in your life. You just cut them out as much as you can. Unless they're family, then it gets a little bit difficult. Anyways, I need to come back to what Killoran said earlier. Drop everything. Tell me about the horror book. So to share a little bit of the horror story that I have in mind. So the setting is going to be in the Garden of the Gods. The Garden of the Gods is this world that has been completely taken over by Lovecraftian monstrosities, effectively godlike beings. Not your typical like Cthulhu fare, though there will be some really big, horrifying entities. And these are things that you do not fight against. The heroes of these stories are not going to be out swashbuckling heroes trying to take down gods and whatnot. Like, no. That is, you do not do that. The people who live in this world of the Garden of the Gods can only survive for long by being in wells of light. There are these strange phenomena where light erupts from the planet and envelops everything in a certain area. Everything that is enfolded by the light is protected from the corruption of these Lovecraftian beings. Everything outside of the wells of light has been turned into this insanely dangerous, convoluted, contradictory world of wastelands and fungal forests and man-eating jungles with just the worst monsters imaginable. Now, the people who exist in these wells of light have developed various kingdoms. And the main character, one of the two main characters for this story is going to be a young son of a duke from one kingdom who has been exiled, and he has joined up with travelers who have braved the horrors of the outside world of the garden, and they have made their way to this other city in another well of light, uh, that is just very, very different from anything and everything he has known. And he's going to try to make a living there as the exiled son of a duke. And when and so when he gets there, he's immediately brought under suspicion, not because he's an exile, but because he is colored. And not talking about the color of his skin, because there's going to be loads of people with different colored skin and everything. People actually don't care about the color of your skin in this world. What they care about is the color of your eyes. Because everyone in this world who is not colored has white and gray eyes. But if you, or say that their irises are white and gray, if you are colored, you obviously now have color in your eyes, which is not a good thing, because if you have color in your eyes, that means that you have met one of the gods, and that god has imparted a curse upon you. That curse can be anything. And in the young man's case, his curse is that he can see how everyone will die. And so whenever he meets people for the very first time, he doesn't see a person as they are, he sees their corpse. And so for this guy, he's always at first interacting with loads of corpses. And it's incredibly unnerving for him. After a while of being around someone, he then sees them for as they actually are. And so, but the thing is this: everyone's got different curses, and because the people of this world don't, like, they're not going to hate someone. They're not going to kill someone who has seen a god, because that would then lead to a lot of people being murdered, because a lot of people have seen them. But rather, instead, okay, you've been cursed, so they are marked. They're like, okay, you've got color. And one of the ways your eyes are colored, you're a colored person. So what they then do is they then have to wear these ridiculously pointed hats with white brims that then shield people from having to see the shame of the color of your eyes. And so he ends up in this other kingdom. He gets the ridiculous hat because he's colored. And so he's like, oh well, crud. Well, if people are going to look down on me for having colored eyes, I need to go and find people who will hire me. Well, that's going to lead to the underground. It's going to lead to shady business. And that leads him to then have contact with the second main character of the story, who is a young woman who has inherited her family's crime syndicates, and she's dealing with a lot of her own issues. And you got this guy coming on in from another kingdom, purporting to be the son of a duke. Oh boy, just like what? Like, I don't need to deal with you. And so she's going to try to get rid of him, but in the process of that, things are going to start getting underway that will bring the two of them of necessity closer together to work in partnership with each other. as the entire city is under a serious threat. And it's a threat that if you were to reveal to them what's coming, they would all hate you because it sounds so preposterous and it's so dangerous because it's tied to one of their most important qualities, this greatest danger. I it's not gonna be one of my 300,000 word books. I'm going to try to keep it around the 100,000 word mark for this one. But so kind of think like epic fantasy meets Lovecraftian horror with an interesting splash of sci-fi in there. Uh, that for anyone who's read my book, A Study in Blood, will then begin to make some connections. Also, I'm just going to say this because it's important for me to say it, because I know that there are some underage viewers for Camille's Harem. A Study in Blood is my only 18 plus book. It is not meant for young readers. So that is my necessary qualifier for that. If you are under the age of 18, I do not recommend checking out that book. So yeah, you often don't get content warnings here from Camille's Harem, but that is one where I do have to say, no. If you are under the age of 18, I personally do not consider you mature enough to read A Study in Blood. But yeah, my Lovecraftian horror story will have some connections to A Study in Blood. Because I like my connected universe ideas. Comic Car says this reminds me of an idea I had once for my magical girl story. Two of the antagonists are slotted for horror themes. One of the first enemy, one the first enemy the main character faces is a slasher. The other would be Lovecraftian. You know what? Certain slasher villains over time have kind of become their own Lovecraftian horrors. I'm looking at you. Looking at you, Michael Myers. Michael Myers might as well be a Lovecraftian horror. He just doesn't have. Though, if we were to go by H.P. Lovecraft standards, Michael Myers is not a fish man, and he's not an African American, which is one of the reasons why a lot of people these days are all like, yeah, if we're going to talk about H.P. Lovecraft, let's just all acknowledge the man was a flaming racist. And it's like, yeah. Actually, on that topic, I don't know if any of you have seen gameplay of The Mound. Holy cow. I've been watching gameplay of people who've been playing The Mound. I think it came out just last week. It was just released last week. It's a game that combines the story of conquistadors with Lovecraft, and it is so good. Like, I love the idea of conquistadors barging into the Americas, thinking that they're going to sweep this place, and then they come across just absolute nightmares. And the game is so beautifully tailored to driving players insane. It's something else, and it's a co-op game, so you and your friends can go insane together. Keylorn says, I'm looking forward to it. I love Lovecraftian horror, minus, as you said, the horrible racism. Yeah, and you know what? I'm just going to say that, like, as I thought about it, as I was, like, determining, like, how people would be cursed and everything, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna poke some, like, I like the idea of calling the people who are cursed colored, because it fits so well with Lovecraft, but as opposed to being like, oh, all black people are awful, they're all devil worshippers and subhuman. Instead of doing that, because that's bad, it's really, really bad. Instead making it more magical and nuanced, and obviously something really stupid, but at the same time, as the story unfolds, you come to an understanding why people are scared of those who have color in their eyes. But also, you should be challenged to think, well, should though? Granted, there's reason to be scared, but does that mean that we should that we should look down on them because a person who is colored will be one of the heroes? So, brum, brum, brum. Conquest says, my magical girl story has a main thing where the antagonist sort of imposes a genre on their area of influence, and the main characters try to make the area shift genre to a magical girl story so they are allowed to win, because magical girls, they have pretty much the same abilities but want changes. But what changes is how they use it and their skills and who gave them their magical tools. That's all really, really cool. So, for example, the slasher makes everyone trapped to follow slasher tropes without realizing the magical girls shift them to love and hope. That is so cool. I love this idea. Please, please, please write this. I love this idea. And I could absolutely see it being animated too. Well, I think to round out the evening, I want to put out there onto the interwebs for what my opinion is worth. I do quickly want to share that I went and saw the Odyssey last night. The Odyssey, as interpreted and written by Christopher Nolan, and I really liked it. But I will say this: the soundtrack is nothing to write home about. In fact, the soundtrack gets really annoying at certain parts. I do not like the fact, slight spoilers, that Odysseus doesn't murder all of. Oh, when should we log back on, Lars? You know what? Give me about 10 minutes. Give me about 10 minutes. um, but yeah, I did not go watch the Odyssey because of the smoke. The smoke. Kill Lawrence says, "Oh, how should we support you in the channel?" Hey, Kill Lawrence. So if you haven't subscribed, subscribe is always great. Liking, sharing our videos, but especially checking out the books. The links to the books are in the description. That helps out a whole lot because as books get sold, as books go out there, as people review books, recommend books, that brings a lot of recognition to us. Okay, the wildfire at Spokane, Washington. Oh, I didn't know that Spokane was right now dealing with it was dealing with the bad wildfire. I hope everything's going well, that they're getting that under control. Yikes. Conquer says it's a vague thing, but I really want to have the magical girls try to genre shift the Lovecraftian enemy. Things go off the rails, and it ends up with an eldritch deity becoming a Madoka style magical girl. That is terrifying. That is terrifying. Common Craft. But in any case, for the Odyssey, the thing is this: as far as like spoilers go, if you haven't actually read the poem, then or know anything about the Odyssey, then I guess certain things would be spoilers. But it's like this is one of the most ancient stories out there. You've heard stuff. The movie follows the events of the story pretty well. It takes out the cannibals. Because I think that would make people super uncomfortable. It definitely simplifies the Cyclops encounter, which is both a disappointment, but it's understandable because of the runtime. So it's disappointing, but I get it. There's one action at the end of the story that I find a wee bit questionable, because I feel like. Yeah, I feel like we were really missing out on Odysseus truly getting his vengeance and justice. However, that being said, I really, really like what this movie does for Odysseus and Penelope. I think it really helped to elevate the characters that are from the original epic poem. Telemachus was way more likable than I thought he would be. The guy played by Tom Holland. I think that's just Tom Holland being a really likable guy, really bringing that to the story. I was shocked. I thought I was going to hate their portrayal of Agamemnon. I really liked the portrayal of Agamemnon by the end. Holy cow, he was haunting, and I really liked just how he and his own choices come full circle. I think that Nolan really drove home kind of the poetic justice that Agamemnon had reaped for himself. So I really did like that. And there's one scene towards the end of the movie involving Penelope, Odysseus, and Athena that is so dang good. It's such a it's a beautiful way of basically setting up where Odysseus and Penelope are going to go as characters in their own character arcs. And it also it threaded a needle that I was very skeptical of. So one of the things that Christopher Nolan does within this movie is he incorporates an element of real world history that most people probably have never heard of. And it is the Sea People. The Sea People were this conglomeration of various ethnicities during at the end of the Bronze Age. They were pirates, and we have reason to suspect that they were mostly Greek, or at least that the Greeks kind of gave them the ability to move around the Mediterranean as these massive pirate fleets. But they were a multi-ethnic group that went around the Mediterranean world and even partly into Mesopotamia and just wrecked it. The only civilization of that in that corner of the world that really survived were the Egyptians, and that was because the Egyptians were able to defeat the Sea People. So throughout the movie, the Sea People are constantly referenced. They are this boogeyman that everyone talks about. Everyone says the Sea People are coming. The Sea People are coming. We've heard tales of their vicious exploits. They have sacked cities. They've burned villages. Islands have been laid to waste. And Odysseus, when he reveals the identity of the Sea People, it is so dang good. I was like Christopher Nolan as a historian, tip of the hat to that. You nailed it. I wasn't sure how you could do it, but you did it, because when I heard from the podcast, The Rest is History, that the Sea People were going to feature in the movie, I was like, how are you going to do that? And it's like that's so wild. I'm like, yes, that fits in the time period, but Homer doesn't make a big deal about the Sea People. There's I think here or there a reference to marauders on the sea, but the Sea People themselves don't feature as a main antagonist. Whereas in the movie, they feature as this boogeyman that's chasing Odysseus. At least it seems that that's what's happening. That they are chasing Odysseus. The Rest is History is a USDA choice. Glad you like him. Oh yeah. The Rest is History is a fun podcast. I came across them, I think, when they did their Custer mini series. When they did their Custer mini series, and that I was like, holy cow, because that was actually something that I had really gotten into when I was in grad school. And I was all like, oh, you guys are hitting all these things that I already know about, and you're adding even more. I love it. But yeah, so they talk about the Sea Peoples, and it just that scene is kind of the emotional climax of the movie, and it's not in an overbearing way. It's such a haunting, somber moment that again involves Penelope, Odysseus, and Athena, and it brings everything together. Odysseus's journeys, the boogeyman, the actions of the gods, all of it. And it's just so dang good. And it helps make sense of what Nolan does with the very end of the Odyssey, because he does change the very end of the story from the original poem. And it's an ending that I know will tick people off, but it's an ending that I agree that it works with the way that he told the story. And it could only have been done with the introduction of the Sea Peoples. And so I really actually I felt that that was a good nod to history. That was a good way of making the poem, the or this interpretation of Homer's poem, feel grounded in any sense of reality, while still paying excellent tribute to the supernatural aspect of Homer's original tale. And it worked really, really well, in my opinion. Kill Lawrence says, really? I'll admit, not a lot of Agamemnon stands out there. I'll check it out. Yeah, no, I mean, Agamemnon is definitely, I'm going to say this, I don't stand Agamemnon. Agamemnon's a real piece of work. If anyone who's read the Iliad will know that Agamemnon is an absolutely awful jerk. But I really like the portrayal of Agamemnon, not as a sympathetic character, but as a character who works very, very well in the context of this story. And as one of Odysseus's regrets and ghosts from the Trojan Wars, which works really, really well. The way that Nolan blended all the themes of the Iliad and the Odyssey together, or not say of the entire Iliad, but of parts of the Iliad together with the Odyssey, just it works. It's a thematically very pleasing movie. Its CGI sucks. I will knock it for that. Its CGI and its soundtrack are bad. The acting, I actually really like the acting. The thematic weaving was incredible. The use of history was good, and so that made it very entertaining. You feel all 2 hours and 52 minutes of this movie, but not in a boring way. Never once was I bored. And then there was one time I had to get up and use the bathroom, and I hated it because I'm like, dang it, I'm going to miss something. And I'm like, well, I already know the Odyssey, so it's not like I'm going to miss out something really big. But it was a movie that demanded my attention, and I like that. I like it when a movie can hold my attention, even if it's not necessarily the best. And that's because that means that it's become either very entertaining or very informative. And this movie managed to tap both. Killer says, "Hey, we all like villains. Ursula got me into law school. Oh, with that contract? Oh my gosh. Oh, Ariel, you got to read the contract before you sign your soul away for all eternity. Come on, girl." Uh, the question is, Kill Lawrence, have you been able yet to craft a contract so ironclad that not even the king of all seven seas is able to blast it to pieces? Which I will say, this is one of the coolest moments in The Little Mermaid, when Triton is so ticked off that he tries to obliterate the contract and he rockets Ursula back into a coral. Is actually is such an epic moment. And it's so heartbreaking because it's the moment where you realize that Ursula's plan 100% worked. Conocraft says, an idea I had for my fantasy isekai story was to have the dwarves be dark elves as nods to the real-life origin of the concept of dark elves, as they were the same as dwarves in Norse mythology. That's really cool. It is cool that you were impressed by something that felt like it shouldn't work in that movie. I like it when something surprises someone in a good way. Yeah, I was surprised. I'll be honest. I went in with shaky expectations. I wouldn't say with low expectations, but I went in with shaky expectations. I wasn't sure if I was going to like the movie, and I was prepared to walk out. I'm like, this is a long movie. If this movie doesn't hold me, then I'm willing to walk out. And it held me, and I was I was enthralled with it. Another thing is this: the sack of Troy. When you finally get to see the sack of Troy, it is so uncomfortable. And I was glad that it was, because rather than making it as like, yes, we killed the Trojans, which is how it's portrayed at first in the Odyssey, and kind of within the larger Greek mythos and Greek identity, or I should say ancient Greek identity. Nolan did an excellent job of tapping into why the sack of Troy was an awful thing for everyone involved, including the aggressors. And I was very impressed that he was willing to go there. I was also shocked that he didn't go as far as he could have. This movie was rated R, which means he was given a lot of leeway to do even more. And I think in a way it's tasteful that he didn't go as far as he did. But again, it was kind of shocking that he didn't because he had the leeway. And it was impressive that he still went where he did. So Conquest says, LOL, sign your soul away. Reminds me how pleased I am to have my magical girl story and have the character that is the embodiment of magic and wonder and be someone that loves dull things. That is great. I just felt very satisfied with the idea because, of course, a creature that could find wonder in anything. Man, I got to take some time to watch that movie of some of those details, even if it is bad overall, or I end up not liking it. Yeah, I've been in contact with one of my sisters, who she and I like to trade our insights on movies. She wasn't a fan of this movie, and I can understand why. And she and I definitely agreed on some things that weren't really great. But so it's definitely not a movie for everyone. I just know for myself, I really liked it. Killorn says, agreed on Triton Lars. Yeah, that scene is so good. Well, let's see here. It is about, yeah, it's Viertelnacht, about 17 after 9 where I'm at. I think a good 3 hours, 50 minutes is a good amount of time for for a live stream. I think I'll start wrapping up around here just because I want to get back to writing. I also want to get back to making a little bit more headway on the cruisy video. So that way I can try to hit my goal of having that ready for people to view this weekend. Because I know that the wait has been there for it. No worries, Common Craft. So you've still been here for a fair bit of time. And thank you so much for all of your input and helping drive the conversation. And really, thank you to everyone who stayed with us here for these conversations that we've had, and especially for Scott to be here. That was very, very enjoyable. I think if there's anything to thank you, Kill Lawrence. I'll try to keep up the good work. I think if there's anything still to throw on out is that yes, I do intend as soon as I can to do a video on the J special for Murder Drones, just because that was so well done. I want to, and I need to go back and have a look at the credits because I have a sneaking suspicion that we're going to learn something very important by looking back at the credits again for that short. And then let me think here. I can't think. Let's see here. I don't have any other really big announcements right now, I think. So I believe that will then do it for now. Concraft, thank you, and have a good night yourself as well. Concraft, I saw people suggesting that we may see something in October for the Murder Drones anniversary. That'd be really cool if we do. I know that there's been some speculation that Liam Vickers is kind of getting back into the game. He's been a little tight-lipped about it, and I think he shut down most of his Patreon stuff. So that's an interesting. It's a little bit of an interesting indicator. But in I put her in the bird suit. But yeah. I hope that Liam Vickers does come back onto the scene sooner rather than later. I really want to see how he improves as a creator because Murder Drones was such a big step forward for him. I know that he has stated that he still works full-time as a storyboard artist, which, I mean, absolute kudos to him for holding down a full-time job doing something that he says he loves. So I'm going to say, good on you, man. Yeah, Liam Vickers has been gone from social media. Recently shared the announcement for the J special. Uh, so so I glad that Liam Vickers is still in on that, and I would not be surprised if we learned that Gooseworks soon disappears from social media because I think she deserves it, and she should also take a break. Oh yeah. With actually, one thing that people could do because I would really appreciate it. The YouTube algorithm has kind of punished the latest um, the latest Amazing Digital Circus video simply because recently some of the videos that Scott and I have done have not gotten very good views, and the algorithm punishes YouTubers who don't get great views by not recommending their stuff. So, if you haven't yet checked out my analysis of the one big mistake that I feel that the Amazing Digital Circus finale unfortunately did, and what we can learn from that, please check it out and then share it on social media. That would help out a ton because at least we'll get a few more views and we'll help boost this up just a little bit more here in the algorithm. Because yeah, we do this stuff on YouTube in large. At least I know I do it because I enjoy this creative outlet. I've always wanted to do stuff with video, uh, but it's it's also a great way of making connections with people that we wouldn't be able to connect with otherwise, especially in the changing media landscape. YouTube is still very popular. It's still a great, fun way of connecting with people over stuff like Deltarune, new books, shows. It's a great way of being able to like have my long rants, long analyses, and so forth, talking about the anime that Scott and I really get into. So, yeah, I honestly just being here on YouTube is just like a fun way of expressing ourselves even further and having a chance to connect with people and have talks about writing to gameplay, game design, uh, figuring out how we can connect with other people because there's so much that can and should be said to help encourage other creators to do their absolute best. Because I haven't said this in a while, so I'll say it again. Because you need your stories need you, and the world needs your stories. Cohen says, "Okay, I'll do my part. You keep up the drive. This industry crushes a lot of people, and you guys are too talented to quit now." Well, thank you so much. And Conquer says, "I think the biggest mistake was Gooseworks did not anticipate how the audience would treat the lore like a puzzle, even though there was a massive puzzle event for Gaslight District near Digital Circus." Yeah, that is a mistake. Being able to anticipate what the audience will do is always difficult, though. But that's a good point. Glitch had cultivated an audience that likes puzzle lore, and Gooseworks did not anticipate that, and that's very true. That is very true. Well, everyone, thank you again so much for being here. This was a whole lot of fun. I'm looking forward to meeting you all again in the next video soon. But until then, y'all, choose.